Alright, looks like we are live on Twitch. Let's check the YouTube. We are live on YouTube as well. Alright. Hello, hello. Good to be back on. We got a few things that we're going to cover today, including the UK egg sector pushing back on the proposed cage bans, as we knew that they would. Also some good news. We've got good news from Finland and from Southampton, which we're going to go over as well. But let's start off with a little bit of Fast Action Network. We've got a few more tasks to do here. The first one is for Nor. This is a contact form, so I'm doing it on the other tab, so that I'm not doxing my address and so on. But as always, they make it nice and easy on the Fast Action Network to submit these. So yeah, we've done that. Oh, I clicked off it by mistake. There we go. Still holding the 9-week streak. We're going to get to 10. Be very cool if I can do every week this year. That's the real goal. We've been talking about some setbacks recently, but we do have progress overall. Whoops. We do have progress overall. Oh, hell yeah, look at this. This is a bunch of people commenting about cage-free eggs on the Nor video. And it looks like Fast Action Network actually gives you a different comment each time. Oh, look at this, 25 minutes ago, 3 hours ago, 7 hours ago. Looks like Fast Action Network gives each person a different comment so that it doesn't look botted or copy-pasted. It's another form to fill in, so we'll go ahead and do this. Very nice feature of Fast Action Network, that. Why can't I do this one? Oh, here we go. Again, I'm doing this on the next tab, so if you're wondering what's going on. Boom, lovely. Another contact form. All right, again, I'm going to do it on the next tab. A lot of contact forms today. And send, good. All right, let's keep it going. 456 points. There's a few actions on here today. Must have been a minute since I did this. I'm going to have Tristan King catching up to me if I'm not careful. Whoops. And another contact form. Hey King, how you doing? Hey Andrew, how's it hanging? I don't believe in sun cream and I think it's easy to prove the moon doesn't exist. Can you help? Yeah, we'll see. We'll see, Andrew. Nice to see you. Hey Poe, how's it hanging? Good man, good. How's life treating you? Right, why can't I see... Oh, okay, let's just scroll down on this one. We've got a few good things to get to today, guys. There's some good news. There's some, well, I won't say bad news, but like predictable and worrying news from the UK egg sector. Why is this giving me an error? Submit. Oh, okay, I need to, all right. I guess I have to choose a brand. God, Unilever owns everything, don't they? Let's do Hellmann's. That's one that we've been commenting on a lot. That's where the eggs are at in Unilever. Right, nice, done. Hey, Savvy Coops, how's it hanging? Nice to see you. True, Tristan. Fuck 'em. Well, I haven't yet read this article, but it's worryingly called Egg Sector in Big Push to Oppose Impending Cage Ban. So, I guess that we knew that was coming, even though the majority of eggs in the UK are already from cage-free systems. So honestly, I kind of thought maybe that will mute the industry resistance. But they've got about 10 days left to respond to the consultation at the moment. So I guess they're pretty much going to do a last-ditch attempt to keep the cages. Which again, I mean, I always want to say I feel for the people whose job that is within these companies. Because you've got to think that that's nobody's first choice of profession, right? We're going to be the lobbyists that argue for keeping hens in cages. Like, no kid wants to do that growing up, right? Oh, that looks like we might have done everything now except for the phone call one. Nice. So yeah, I don't know if it's the right thing to say that I feel for them, because maybe they are just kind of heartless bastards who don't mind. In any case, they've kind of sold their souls for the cause. We've got people out here who are every day just off their own back, wanting to help animals and contribute to the campaign to get hens out of cages and improve animal welfare within the evil system so that we make it a little bit easier for plant-based products to compete. And we've got people out here who, I guess, are only doing this if they're paid, campaigning to keep hens in cages. So that's what we're looking at here. Oh, really? Sorry, Daddy. Okay, nice. Well, welcome. This is a safe refuge for vegans fleeing Discord right now. So in many ways, this was all too predictable. We've got egg sector in big push to oppose impending cage ban. Who could have seen it coming, right? Oh, you're joking. This is going to be a paid thing. Let me... Oh, damn, that doesn't even work. All right, well, I guess I'm not joining Farmers Weekly in order to read the whole article here. Let's read what we can. We'll see if we can find a source for this somewhere else. The UK egg sector is mounting a major push to resist government plans to phase out enriched cage systems for laying hens, pullets, and breeder layers. The ongoing DEFRA-led consultation applying across all 4 UK nations proposes banning new cages from 2027 and phasing out all existing cages by 2032. The British Egg Industry Council warns this could undermine UK producers' competitiveness, push egg production overseas, and impose major costs. This is largely the part that we're interested in. It's launched a lobbying campaign urging producers to write to their MPs and respond to the paywall. Right, let's see if we can find another source for this. British Egg Industry Council cages. They might have published something on their own website. Let's see if this... Alright, well this is not paywall, so we can have a look at this one. From egginfo.co.uk, brought to you by British Lion Eggs. Egg industry cries foul over government betrayal. Betrayal, what a word to use, eh? British egg industry representatives have accused the UK government of duplicity as it continues to undermine British egg producers and mislead consumers with its ongoing support for imported battery eggs. Okay, this is an interesting framing. This might end up being something that we agree with. We obviously don't want to be importing battery eggs, but I'm sure they're going to go on to cry about the proposed cage ban in the UK. We'll see. The accusation comes as the government agrees a tariff-free extension on the trade deal with Ukraine, which will see millions more eggs from battery systems banned in the UK for more than a decade flood into the UK. Oh, well, this is going to end up being something that we agree with if this is really what it's about. We've spoken about low welfare imports on the channel before. I'm really mostly interested in this story about the new lobbying campaign to oppose the cage ban. It's annoying if the only article we've got on this is paywalled. I'm obviously not paying the paywall. Let's see, the grocer, is this going to also be paywalled? I guess you get a certain number of free articles on the grocer. Right, this is from the 13th of Jan, so I feel like it might be kind of an old one as well, but let's see. Government plans to end the production of caged eggs by 2032 will expose the UK to unfair competition from imports and risk moving food production overseas, the egg industry has warned. With figures showing imports of lower welfare eggs from Ukraine increased 27,400% last year. The British Egg Industry Council said the total ban on caged eggs in the UK would undermine farmers and further distort the market while delivering little meaningful benefit for hens. Earlier this week, the government launched 2 consultations on animal welfare, one to phase out colony systems for egg-laying hens by 2032, and another on sheep mutilation practices. Okay, that's interesting. I don't think that I have seen that one. Castration and tail docking, which causes pain to lambs and are often carried out without pain relief. The egg industry body has raised concerns that the government has not committed to equivalent bans on imported eggs, meaning UK farming is exposed to unfair competition from imports and risks moving food production overseas. Yeah, I mean, I have to say, this is one of the issues where we get the epic handshake meme of animal advocates and animal farmers both agreeing on restricting low welfare imports. We urge the government, if it wishes to ban enriched cages, to make a clear and unequivocal commitment to fair trade and support UK farmers, said BEIC CEO Nick Allen. Products that would be illegal to produce in the UK must be illegal to import and sell here. This is going to be really annoying if we can only find coverage that we agree with on this. I mean, this article seems to be about the Egg Industry Council urging producers to respond to the consultation and oppose bans on cages in the UK. But here they're kind of making the argument that we make, that this ban has to be accompanied by a ban on low welfare imports. Yeah, same out as larger companies are already 90% plus cage free in the food service sector, so it must be one or two producers dictating a whole industry position. Yeah. That's true. I mean, I thought that it would be, we're already at high enough rates of cage free that we don't get that much opposition from the domestic egg industry, but apparently not. There is going to still be some pushback. He also warned that with this regulation, sections of society may be forced to pay more for eggs or remove them from their shopping baskets altogether. This is an interesting one because it probably is the case, and this is part of our theory of change here, that, for example, banning cages and other welfare improvements like having more space and not using fast-growing breeds and so on will increase the cost of the relevant animal products and will hopefully reduce the number of them produced and consumed. So that's the part that usually animal advocates are saying that part kind of quietly, right? Because usually that is what the industry is saying to argue for the continuation of low welfare, high profitability practices. And of course, if we get rid of those practices, it makes plant-based options much more competitive. And you'll get to the point where plant-based eggs or tofu, for example, are going to be much cheaper than eggs from cage-free systems, and that's all there will be if the proposal goes through. Alan's concerns were echoed by NFU President Tom Bradshaw, who said the UK could risk offshoring production to jurisdictions we have no control over and expose the resilience of our domestic food systems. Yeah, well, I mean, this is an interesting framing because I kind of half agree with what he said here, right? It is bad if we just offshore production to places with lower welfare standards. We're not actually reducing any animal suffering in that case. We're just moving it around the globe. So that is bad, but expose the resilience of our domestic food systems. Again, we've looked at data showing that animal production in the UK is nowhere near as self-sufficient as the industry wants us to believe. They say that we're something like 85% self-sufficient in chicken and pork production, but they don't account for imported soy feed in that equation. And once you account for that, that percentage drops dramatically. Of course, animal products are hugely inefficient because we're only getting a fraction of the calories fed to the animals out as edible animal products. And so even if we're producing a lot of the chicken and pork and eggs and whatever else here in the UK, that doesn't mean that we're not reliant on imports. Probably means that we're more reliant on imports because we're importing a load of soy in order to feed the animals. So the animal industry likes to use this food security, domestic production argument, but it's very misleading because they don't account for imported feed, right? That's interesting, Andrew. I think the activists push a move on from better chicken commitment and cage-free towards dual-purpose breeds that can be used for meat and egg laying. They'll vastly reduce the number of chickens required by both industries total, while allowing for better conditions for the poor remaining birds. Yeah, that's interesting. It is kind of perverse that we have specific breeds for egg laying and then specific breeds for meat. And I guess you're right. If we could have chickens doing both of those things, I mean, still, right, sucks for those chickens, but yeah, it would be an improvement overall. Let me mute these notifications I've got going off. Oh, this How is this not already muted? Mute this. Okay. Ukrainian eggs have become more common in the UK following the government's introduction of tariff-free imports in a support deal ending in March 2026. In the animal welfare strategy, the government said it would consider whether overseas produce has an unfair advantage and be prepared to use full range of powers at our disposal to protect our most sensitive sectors. Alright, well that sounds like good news. They maybe are open to doing restrictions on low welfare imports. Again, I really do think that's a necessary accompaniment to improvements in welfare standards, because otherwise you're just moving the production around, right? The British Free Range Egg Producers Association, head of strategy and producer engagement Gary Ford, said the timeline was extremely tight. He said the government would have to work with industry to create the right conditions to expand cage-free production while maintaining both sustainable and profitable egg production, as well as the current levels of self-sufficiency in the sector. There's that word again, right? NFU Poultry Board Chair Will Raw also added that the method of production on its own is not necessarily an indication of welfare. Yeah, they're going to obfuscate on this stuff. Colony cage eggs positively contribute to wider food security and environment goals, which sadly do not appear to have been acknowledged sufficiently by the government. Nothing about animal welfare here then, hey? We're also warned that there are significant barriers that need to be unlocked by the government, including a planning system to encourage growth. Okay, so he's made the statement the method of production alone is not necessarily an indication of welfare. And you think, like, okay, these next two paragraphs is going to explain why that is. He's going to give some sort of justification for continued use of cage systems. But no, he's just talking about food security, right, which we know is kind of a bullshit talking point. Environmental goals. We need to encourage the system to grow. Nothing about animal welfare in that. Also, how many livestock industry sources have we heard from here before hearing from any animal welfare orgs? We've got the British Egg Industry Council, we've got the National Farmers Union, we've got the British Free Range Egg Producers Association, and we've got the National Farmers Union again, someone else from the National Farmers Union. And now, okay, so after four pro-livestock sources, while the industry has expressed concern, animal rights groups have welcomed the proposals. The RSPCA, which has campaigned against cage systems for over half a century, said the consultation was a crucial opportunity to push towards a cage-free future. Every year across the UK, millions of farmed animals are kept in cages, unable to express their natural behaviours and experiencing an unimaginable amount of suffering, said RSPCA's Head of Public Affairs David Bowles. 73% of the British public oppose the use of cages for hens, and we have always been clear, cages cannot be part of British farming any longer. That's interesting. I'm not sure where that 73% number's from. We have it much higher. I think we have a 94%, if I'm not mistaken, or 93%. So I wonder where that's from. That's just another gross article. The organisation called on the public to make their voices heard throughout the course of the 8-week consultations. Humane League MD Sean Gifford said this consultation launch is great news and kudos to the government for moving so quickly. But we urge them to remember that warm words won't free hens. Hens are suffering in cramped cages in their millions, and every single one of them need to be freed as soon as possible. The government can be reassured this compassionate act would have the full support of the general public. True. Well, this is like a little older news from when this first came out, I guess. I'd love to see more recent stuff. This story's from 2 days ago, but it's paywalled. So I guess that we are not going to be able to read the full details of this, but essentially we already know what's happening here, right? And we already knew that this would happen. The egg sector is going to fire up the lobbying engines and they're going to reply to this consultation, which I'll put the link in chat in case people want to fill it out. They're going to be replying to this government consultation on cage-free systems. And of course, they are going to be arguing as hard as they can to keep cages for egg-laying hens. So here's the Google Doc you can use. You can copy-paste the answers from here into the consultation. We're trying to get as many supportive responses to the consultation as we can. Feel free to share this doc around. People can fill it out to make sure that the consultation is overwhelmed with pro-animal responses. That's what we want to see. And yeah, as I've been saying for weeks, there will be industry lobbyists looking to oppose this. So it's super important that we are doing the right thing and being heard. And this is our opportunity, right? This consultation will close in about 10 days' time. And during that time, we need to make sure that we're speaking up for animals and submitting responses so that we can increase the chance of this cage ban going through. We're so nearly there with this, guys. It's looking very positive, but if they're now overwhelmed with industry responses, they always report the number of pro and anti responses that they get from these things. So my hope is they're going to be overwhelmed with responses favoring the ban. But if we sleep on it, we could get outdone by the industry here. So again, I mean, it's shameful for the people whose job this is, right? Make a campaign to get people lobbying in favor of keeping cages for egg production systems. Let's get all these hens back in cages. Right, imagine if that's your job. So shameful, shameful, shameful for the people pushing against this ban. But we still have the opportunity to make it happen. So find the link in chat and yeah, let's make it happen, all right? On to better news, though. Landmark vote positions Helsinki as a plant-based policy frontrunner. Let's go. I haven't read the details of this yet, but it seems like good news, so let's get into it. In a decisive move towards a more sustainable food system, the City Council of Helsinki has approved a landmark initiative to cut the city's procurement of meat and dairy products by 50% by 2030. The motion passed on 25th of February 2026 with a clear majority and broad cross-party support, 57 votes in favour and 23 against. That is not too shabby, hey? Because there's only 80 people on the board. What's 57 as a percentage of 80? 71.25. That's a landslide. The initiative, titled Half Better, was introduced by City Councillor Mai Kivila. Under the decision, meat and dairy and public food services will be replaced with nutritious and appealing plant-based options across schools, daycare centres, hospitals, and other municipal institutions. This is a victory for climate responsibility, animal welfare, and children's right to a sustainable future, Kivela stated following the vote. The Half Better initiative builds on a nationwide campaign launched by Greenpeace in Finland. The campaign challenged municipalities across the country to serve half better food in public procurement, half as many animal-based products replaced with nutritious plant-based options. A total of 35 council motions were submitted nationwide. Helsinki's vote now marks the most significant breakthrough of the campaign at the city level. Okay, interesting. So this is in the capital of Finland. And there's a bunch of other cities across Finland also considering this. The decision opens a pathway for the entire plant-based industry in Finland, says Jukka Kajan. I'm not going to be able to pronounce any of these Finnish names, but there we go. Executive Director of the Industry Association Plant-Based Food Finland. Helsinki is not only strengthening climate action and improving public health, but also creating long-term market predictability for companies developing plant-based solutions. This is essential for enabling Finland's world-class innovations to scale and expand internationally. Yeah, this is a really good point. It is going to be something that is a great opportunity for the plant-based industries in countries that do this, because essentially you have predictable, consistent demand for your products going forward. And as a business, that's going to put you in a much better position, gives you that certainty of demand, gives you that certainty of revenue, and you're going to be able to make more investment decisions. You're probably going to be able to attract more investors as well as a result. So very based to see this happening in the capital, and hopefully that's setting the tone for the other votes that are coming in Finland as well. From individual choice to system level change. The decision reflects a broader understanding that food policy is not merely about individual dietary choices, but about structural signals. Helsinki serves millions of meals annually through its public catering services. By reshaping procurement at this scale, the city aims to normalise plant-forward eating patterns and align public spending with its climate and biodiversity commitments. Kivelä underlines the decision is about coherence and responsibility. It does not make sense for a city to fund climate mitigation on one hand while accelerating biodiversity loss and emissions through its food procurement on the other. Yeah, that's a nice framing. Coherence and responsibility, like consistency with your other policies. And we've spoken about this before, how that's really something lacking in a lot of government departments. Oftentimes government departments, it seems to be like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing kind of situation. Where in the UK, for example, you have the Climate Change Committee saying that we need to slash meat production and consumption by 30%. But we also, on the other hand, have DEFRA saying we're not going to accept any situation which entails a reduction in animal farming. So you're like, which is it, guys? Right? What are we going to do? I think we're reading in France as well, where the basically a similar situation, right? Like the Climate and Environment Department is saying this is good news. We need to reduce meat consumption for their new dietary guidelines. And then the Agricultural Department really pushing back and saying we need to moderate the language and, you know, basically trying to water down that recommendation. Each department kind of feels like it's representing its own interests, however short-sighted they may be, right? It's not actually going to be in the long term of the Agricultural Department's interests to be backing policies which are going to accelerate climate change. But there you go, they're short-sighted, I suppose. In addition to climate and biodiversity protection and public health, the rationale is also grounded in fiscal responsibility. According to preliminary calculations conducted at Aalto University, plant-based meals are already more cost-effective for Helsinki's food services. If half of current meat procurement were replaced with sustainable plant proteins, the city could save more than €3 million annually. Wow, that's banging. And that fits with this that I've just shared today on LinkedIn. We've looked at this graph a couple of times. This is the price of beef mince versus plant-based mince in the UK. And this is only since 2021, so this is not long ago, right? This is 5 years. And woof, we've seen more than doubling in the per kilo price of beef mince during the same period, where plant-based mince went up a little bit and now it's come back down and it's actually at its lowest point on this graph. It also fits with the thing that I showed the other day from our research for plant-based universities, which is this. Here we go. So this is the cost per meal that we calculated for meat meals, vegetarian meals, and plant-based meals on a university menu from the UK. And yeah, there's massive cost savings available. Vegetarian meals are 30% cheaper than plant-based meals, and then vegetarian meals are 30% cheaper than meat meals, and then plant-based meals are 21% cheaper than vegetarian meals. So big cost savings available from moving away from animal products, which, yeah, are increasingly the most expensive things on the menu and in our shopping baskets. So yeah, no surprises that they can save a lot of money by moving away from animal products in public sector catering. A signal to Europe's public sector. With this vote, Helsinki demonstrates how public procurement can be used as a policy lever to accelerate the protein transition. The move sends a strong signal to policymakers, food industry actors, and institutional caterers across Europe. The decision also strengthens Finland's emerging position in the plant-based food sector, where innovation, food tech development, and sustainable ingredient production are gaining momentum. Unlike in many other European countries, Finland's plant-based retail market is growing at double-digit rates. By building on this momentum, Helsinki sends a strong signal to the entire food sector. It reduces investment risk, encourages innovation, and supports Finland's position as a competitive player in the global protein transition, says Jukka Kejan of Plant-Based Food Finland. Yeah, all of this stuff's incredibly important. Like, if you read this kind of quickly, as I have just done, you can miss some of the details, but they're listing off different specific benefits that are going to come to the plant-based sector and to society more broadly from this kind of move. Right, where if you use public procurement wisely and say we're no longer going to guarantee ongoing demand for animal products, we're actually going to move that to guarantee ongoing demand for plant-based products, then you can really change the game and move to a situation where all of that certainty of revenue, all of that support for innovation, all of that certainty for investors can come into the plant-based sector. So after you see motions like this passed, when you look at like the actual amount of food affected, it's fairly modest, right? Because this is only public sector catering, which makes up a small portion of all the food, right? Most of it is in private sector. And it's cutting by 50%. But it's more about the structural changes and the guarantees for plant-based companies, plant-based producers, plant-based investors, that there is going to be ongoing demand and they can be certain of that. So I won't be surprised to see increased investment in the plant-based industry in Finland following this news. And also, of course, there's a big signalling thing going on, which they mention as well, that you're going to increasingly see other countries following suit and doing similar things. They're going to look at Finland and say, oh, good, okay, that seems to have worked. That's going to cut their greenhouse gas emissions and save them money and support the plant-based sector and innovation. Why don't we have a bit of that as well? Similar to the thing about Amsterdam banning adverts for meat products, right? It's like the actual impact on demand might be kind of modest, but it's a signal to investors, to businesses, to other policymakers. This is the direction that things are going in. And to individuals as well. Like, it's important to set the example. You know, we have bans on cigarettes, for example. Now, for the people who are already smoking cigarettes, it's probably, they don't need to see adverts to remember to smoke cigarettes, right? But it sets the norm at a societal level, like this is something that we broadly disagree with and disapprove of, and we're going to move in the direction of doing less of this. It kind of sets a precedent for other kind of legislation that you might want to bring in as well. So, yeah, really good news from Finland. And we're kind of doing the rounds with different European countries lately, having various based initiatives going on, various based policies in the direction of more plant-based foods. We did Norway the other day. We were reading about France's new meat-reduced dietary guidelines. Big investments in alt protein companies in Germany. So there's a lot of good stuff going on. There's a lot of reason for hope. There's a lot of things going in the right direction. They've the story, Tristan, is that they've approved a 50% cut in meat and dairy products by 2030 in Helsinki's city food procurement. So it's a lot of good signals for the plant-based sector. Hell yeah. Wish they would ban the advertising here, yeah. We'll get there, we'll get there. Again, all these things are like dominoes falling, right? They kind of build up the momentum. So I think reasons to be cheerful. Well done, Helsinki. Good for them. Let's see how many likes we've got on this post, by the way. 25 so far. Look, this one about the person who donated is up to 238, if anyone's counting. This one's at 25 so far. We'll see. We'll see. I feel like this one could go big. 25 in 3 hours, and it's a Friday as well, which is a bit of a slow day on LinkedIn, so they say. So this is from Vegconomist, and we actually have more good news from Vegconomist as well. The students of Southampton have voted to move towards plant-based menus in response to the climate crisis. There they are, celebrating their win, plant-based universities. On Thursday, 19th of February, the Student Council of the University of Southampton Students' Union voted by an overwhelming majority of 12-3 for Students' Union catering facilities to adopt plant-based by default, and for the Students' Union to lobby for university-wide adoption of plant-based by default. Nice. We know about plant-based by default. We've seen how much this can increase selection of plant-based products. When you just simply frame the default as plant-based, now you're not taking away anyone's choice, you're not banning meat, right? You're not even making it more expensive through taxes or anything like that. You're just using a behavioral nudge to make plant-based options the default, and you actually see, I reckon, I've calculated from a few different studies on this topic, about a 30 percentage point increase in the number of people getting plant-based meals when you switch to defaults like that. This follows a student union petition for plant-based by default launched on 3rd of February, which obtained over 950 signatures from students in just 7 days, and support from over 40 Southampton academics, including the director of the Sustainability and Resilience Institute, Professor Craig Hutton, and ecology experts, Professor Patrick Doncaster and Professor Felix Eigenbrod. Wow, based. Well, these guys doing the campaign must have been pretty active. That's pretty impressive, right? Nearly 1,000 signatures in a week from Southampton students and staff, including like some sustainability and ecology professors. So that's pretty cool. And you know, I bet this comes down to, here's the people who did it, right? This would be like the committee responsible for this. There's only 7 of them, right? Probably, 18 to 21-year-olds. And probably within this, there's like 1 or 2 of these people who are responsible for almost all the signatures. That would be my bet. I could be wrong there. Maybe it's a team effort, but often seems to be the case, right? Group projects, you have the guy who carries the group. It's probably like one or two of these people, I would bet, is responsible for the majority of these close to 1,000 signatures in less than a week. It really goes to show how you don't need massive infrastructure or massive teams or big budgets or salaries or anything like that in order to make a real difference for animals. Here you've got like this ragtag group of 7 students who have driven this campaign, and in 7 days they've got nearly 1,000 signatures, and now the council has overwhelmingly adopted the proposition. 12-3, so what's that, 80%? Another landslide. The motion highlighted animal farming and fishing's contribution to the climate and ecological crisis, and the public health threats caused by animal agriculture, citing numerous studies such as those from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN and the University of Oxford. In a wave of universities taking no-nonsense steps to reduce their contribution to the climate crisis by switching to plant-based catering, Southampton becomes the latest student body to step up. The passing of this motion follows similar successful votes at Bristol and Imperial College London last year to move towards plant-based menus. Southampton also joins many other universities across Europe in voting for this transition. Last week, students at Bologna, Italy voted for 100% plant-based canteens. Wow, okay, nice. Well done, Bologna, Italy. This is like, Italy's up there with France in my mind in terms of cultures which are not naturally kind towards plant-based initiatives. Let's put it like that. So well done, Bologna, Italy as well. Fair play to you. These recent wins bring the total number of universities that have passed a plant-based motion to 25. This decision recognises the devastating impact of animal agriculture and the need to move towards a plant-based food system. Matthew Rockford, a PhD student at the University of Southampton, said, "We're delighted that the Student Council of Southampton has voted in favour of moving towards plant-based catering. This decision recognises the devastating impact of animal agriculture and the need to move towards a plant-based food system to deal with some of the biggest issues we face today. With this strong mandate from students, it's time for the university to move away from animal products, shift to sustainable catering on campus, and set an example for other universities to follow." The motion launched by the Plant-Based University Southampton campaign identified that a move towards a plant-based food system is a necessary part of preventing global warming, going beyond 1.5 degrees centigrade, and that animal agriculture and fishing are main drivers of ecological destruction. It also described the public health threats caused by animal agriculture, with over 36% of emerging zoonotic diseases being associated with animals used in food production. Oh, that's a good stat to have to hand. We know that, they say 80% of emerging diseases are from animals. And, one talking point that I actually hadn't heard when I was having my debate with Paul Wood, he says that most zoonotic diseases don't come from farmed animals, they come from wildlife. And honestly, I hadn't really heard that before. I said, I notice you're not saying that farmed animals don't play a role, right? They are still producing some amount of zoonotic diseases, but I didn't have the I didn't have the talking point to I didn't have the stats to hand to come back on that. But this study, 2021, says over 36% of the zoonotic diseases are associated with animals kept for food production. Well, that's a good one to have to hand. Well done, Southampton students, for that. In an attempt to deal with the unsanitary conditions on animal farms, around 70% of antibiotics used globally are given to farmed animals, making it a leading cause of antimicrobial resistance. Yeah, we know that one. The university is acting on its responsibility to lead on climate action. Dr. Bex Spake, Associate Professor of Climate and Environmental Change at Southampton, said, "This is excellent news. The university is acting on its responsibility to lead on climate action." I gotta stop reading these because they're always just repeated. This decision aligns with scientific evidence that shifting to plant-rich diets is essential for cutting emissions, protecting nature, and securing food for future generations. Plant-Based Universities is an international network of students who are campaigning for their universities and students' unions to adopt 100% plant-based catering, and has received high-profile support from Southampton alumnus and environmentalist Chris Packham. Whoa, we know this guy, okay. Oh, I didn't know he went to Southampton. That's kind of cool. He's a pretty, I would say, pretty famous, I guess TV presenter is his main thing, and vegan here in the UK. So very based. The co-executive directors of Greenpeace UK, Ariba Hamid and Will McCallum, and leader of the Green Party, Zach Polanski. Oh, that's kind of cool. He was getting involved in the Plant-Based Universities campaign at Southampton. I'm surprised he's got time to do that. Too busy winning by-elections, I would have thought. The group believes their university should follow the scientific research that they produce on the environmental impacts of farming and fishing. The campaign is active in 80 institutions, with the group encouraging interested students to sign up to run local campaigns. Yeah, I mean, I think this should be a big hope pill and a big go and do something pill for anyone who was considering it, or, you know, kind of who needs a bit of motivation to go and do something. Within the organizations that you're a part of, you can really make changes. You can lobby your, institutional leaders to move in the direction of plant-based food. And plant-based defaults, I think, is a great one. Because again, you're not restricting anyone's choice. You're not making it so that people can't get meat, or they have to pay loads more for meat in this case. It's just saying we're going to change the default. You can ask for the non-default if you want to. But as we know, this is going to have a big impact on what people in fact choose to eat. So very well done to the students at the Southampton who led this campaign. And well done to the student council at the University of Southampton Students' Union for voting the right way on it. Got support from experts within the institution and celebrities outside of the institution, including Chris Packham and Zach Polanski. So very, very cool. What a cool thing to be involved in as well. Like, imagine if you did this as a student. That's going right on the CV, right? That's going right on the LinkedIn. Get that right on there. This kind of thing is very good for demonstrating. Students think about this in terms of like demonstrating to potential employers, but also just demonstrating to yourself. I think that's actually the main important thing here. Or I wouldn't say the main important thing, but certainly a very important thing. These guys who achieved this have now had that first-person experience of, wow, we can really change things because we did it, right? With this ragtag group of half a dozen students, and we came together. We got almost 1,000 signatures in just a week. We got support from all kinds of celebrities, and we made the difference. And yeah, fair play to them. I won't be surprised if these guys go on to have successful careers in campaigning. What a great victory. Well done, Southampton students. All climate activists should be vegan. True, Bretta based. I feel like 10 years ago, people were sympathetically curious about plant-based food. Now it's almost cool to slam on it. In your opinion, will it tip back? Yeah, I hope so, Andrew. I hope so. I think, we're seeing rays of sunshine that plant-based is still on the up in several places. Ultimately, we have got the truth on our side. Right, I like that they're citing here. They're citing research from FAO and from University of Oxford. they're citing these studies about it's a necessary part of preventing global warming, it's a major driver of ecological destruction, zoonotic diseases, antibiotics. Like, public opinion and like vibes do sway with time, but these things haven't stopped being true. And I think that sensible institutional decision makers, fortunately, at least here in the UK, can't speak so much to the US these days, but fortunately institutional decision makers are still like pretty sane with respect to looking at the evidence and going with what the evidence says, and they can't really be moved by silly talking points that kind of appear to suggest that meat's fine, and that we don't need to reduce meat consumption and stuff like that. Fortunately, for the most part, institutional decision makers have like teams of researchers who can understand what the data actually says, what's the important things to pay attention to. So, in my opinion, it's pretty hope-filling that, a lot of the institutions still seem to have their heads screwed on. Again, let's not think too much about the Orange Man in this context, but I think there's reasons to be hopeful. These things haven't stopped being true, and despite a lot of meat industry lobbying and misinformation and misleading talking points that are disseminated through these influencers and so on, I think that the truth will out, and the arc of history is long but bends towards justice and all this kind of stuff. I think there's good reasons to be optimistic about a lot of these things. So we're keeping the hopium flowing on the Vegan 2.0 live stream. Okay, this is by the European. All right, that looked like it was a EU resolution for a second there. Ingredient, cool name. Let's see if we got anything else on Green Queen. Yeah, the cultured chocolate stuff, not that interested for me. Blended meat, not that interesting. Alright, I guess nothing much going on there. Right, I really need to eat something. So I'm going to do that. I've been putting on my early videos when I go and do admin, like eating. But the problem is that a lot of them have copyright music in them, which fucks me up on the stream. So I got to be a little bit careful with that. You know what I'll probably do is just put a little waiting screen while I go and spend 5 minutes making food, and then I'll bring it back and we'll watch. So we got a couple of good AI and animal things, actually. This is long blog post by Sandcastles, which I won't try and read while I'm eating, but we do have a documentary from Plant-Based News. Anyone seen this? This is just out a day ago, so I'm hoping it's still pretty fresh. So we'll have the documentary from Plant-Based News, and I can kind of comment on that in between munching. But let me stick something on to keep it going here. Right. I'll be 5 minutes, okay? Yeah, didn't know the music was going to get this vibey. Might be a little too vibey. That's enough of that. That's enough of that. Good, good, good. True, Poe, trying to hypnotize you into giving more to the Humane League. Very true, very based. Is it working? Alright, let's have a look at this doco then. 35 mins. I think it's a really important topic. We'll know about the increasing importance of AI. We read that very long blog post about the futures of AI and how each one of them might impact on animals. And yeah, now Plant-Based News has come out with a documentary on the topic. AI and animals. Will the AI revolution save or destroy billions of animals? Pretty high stakes. So let's have a watch.
In the same way that AI is going to affect so much of human life, possibly all aspects of human life, we can really think about.
Hey, sorry to pause straight away, but I know this person. This is Matty Wilkes. If you've ever heard me say that I was doing something niche enough, we don't want to do it dirty with the pause. If you've ever heard me say that I was doing something niche enough in my PhD, that I was one of only 2 people looking at consumer acceptance of cultivated meat. This is the other one. This is the other one, Matty Wilkes. And I met her at a conference in probably 2021, I'm going to say. And I was really fangirling, I was like, wow, you're Matty Wilkes. I cited your study. She's like, I cited your study. It was a great moment. It was a great moment. But yeah, sorry, I won't pause Andy all the way.
Same way that AI is going to affect so much of human life, possibly all aspects of human life, we can really think about it having similar impacts on animal lives.
What is upon us may be something as big and massively changing as the Industrial Revolution or the Agricultural Revolution.
I think there's a real concern that the effect of AI on animals will be negative.
I think it would be crazy not to wake up and see that this is actually going to be transformative. And the sooner we can do that, the better the world will go for animals.
We should be really, really cautious and make sure that AI is being used in an ethically responsible way.
AI's impact on humans is now being widely discussed. Yet its effects on non-human animals receive very little attention, even though AI will affect them in multiple ways. On the one hand, AI-powered farming technologies present massive risks for animals. On the other hand, AI can also provide powerful tools for animal advocacy, especially for helping wild animals. In addition, large language models can significantly influence public attitudes regarding speciesism and the moral consideration of sentient beings. The current values with which they are trained may also provide the basis for how future AI systems behave toward animals. And there are other ways AI can influence the future of animals. Animal advocates can take this into account and take action before it's too late.
AI is already having an impact on animals in various ways. The large language models are answering questions about animals, and sometimes they're answering them in ways that make people think of animals as just objects to eat, But the largest and most worrying impact that AI is starting to have is on factory farms, because there we're talking about millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, and even billions of animals that are being affected, and more will be affected in future. And the whole point of this will be to make factory farming more efficient. And that in itself is a bad thing, because in the efficiency of factory farming, the producers are not interested in the cost to animals.
Think who's going to be controlling these AI systems and what are their motivations going to be. And we can look to the past to see what the motivations of the big producers are, where the vast majority of farmed animals are kept. And that tends to be just finance and productivity. So companies are going to use it to increase their profits, to cut down costs, and to get as much meat or milk or eggs from their animals as possible.
By default, we cannot assume that AI will go well for animals. If we look at history, every new technology that's come by, like the Industrial Revolution, like the Green Revolution where we planted more crop, all these things enabled factory farming, and that went really bad for animals. And so right now we're seeing AI play out in industrial animal agriculture. They are using it more and more to automate these systems. If we miss this opportunity and this technology goes everywhere, it's going to be incredibly hard to change.
Yeah, there's a big piece of this which is about just like labor saving, right? You'll increasingly be able to have AI systems doing jobs on factory farms which previously required expensive human labor. And so you'll be able to have more animals farmed for the same price, you'll be able to have cheaper animal products. And all of that is obviously bad for animals. It's interesting as well that because factory farms are businesses with investors and with ROI, like rates that get tracked, right? They will be systematically incentivized to adopt AI insofar as it can increase their productivity, and the ones that don't will lose investors to the ones that do. Like, it will just go in this direction kind of automatically. And this is another thing where the difference from the business world to the non-profit world doesn't necessarily have the same impact in the context of non-profits, right? Because charity donors may or may not care about whether the organization uses AI. You might get a lot of vegan donors who think, oh, AI is bad for whatever reason, and so I'm not going to give to the charities that use AI. So animal charities won't be incentivized in the same way that factory farm businesses will be to adopt AI technologies, and that is a problem. Richie on my team, who's going to come on the channel at some stage, is big at trying to incentivize the adoption and encourage the adoption and give AI trainings and stuff like this in animal organizations, because this is the way that we can make organizations much more effective and efficient at what they do. But it would be way too easy for AI technology to get taken up by factory farms where there's a financial incentive, and pretty much the systems are going to guarantee that that happens to the extent that it can, versus the non-profit world where, you know, hopefully donors want to give to the more effective organizations, and this is why things like animal charity evaluators are so important. But maybe they don't. Maybe a lot of them just like to give to their local sanctuary or whatever that like feels good for them. There's not any guarantees that charities will improve their efficiencies with AI in the same way that there are guarantees for profit-making businesses, including factory farms. How realistic is worrying that AI will worsen future farmed animal suffering, considering the progress of lab-grown meat? Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing there's going to be two sides to this coin. They're kind of opening with the ways that it could go badly, but I'm sure we're going to hear as well about the ways that it could go well. And yeah, absolutely, in cultivated meat right here, you do have things which are profit-making businesses and inventors are going to incentivize them to adopt AI as much as possible. So there is that system, and that's why alternative proteins, it's really important to have like a business arm of the animal movement, because you can get these profit-generating, this profit-generating arm of the movement that will have these economic incentives to be more efficient and more productive. And again, you just don't have that in charities because the outcomes are fundamentally separated from the revenue in a way that there's no guarantee that the revenue goes towards the most effective organizations. That's why it's so woke and vegan 2.0 to be concerned with charity effectiveness. And there's plenty of room to argue about which charities are most effective, which interventions really work or make a difference, right? We can discuss all of that. But, fundamentally, it's so important that that is the way that we're thinking about our donations. We have way fewer resources than the animal industries, and if we don't have some sort of mechanism for ensuring that we're using them effectively, then we're never going to win. But I'm sure we're going to see some of the good side or the potential upsides of AI in this video as well, so we'll see. Oh, that sounds cool, Andrew. Extrapolations on Apple TV. They use AI to talk to whales and they go extinct. Yeah, fuck. That sounds like a tearjerker, honestly. Yeah, I mean, communication with animals could well be something that AI facilitates more so as well. We'll see. We'll see.
The ability to monitor, control, and manipulate billions of animals with minimal human oversight, combined with genetic modifications and environmental controls optimized purely for economic efficiency, creates the potential for suffering on a very large scale, one that dwarfs current factory farming. This could mean that many more animals are bred and killed, and that they suffer more significantly in the process.
If AI makes factory farms more efficient, makes the products cheaper, it makes it more difficult for the plant-based alternatives to compete with them. And it also may mean that they can stock animals even more densely than they are now, because the AI maybe will alert them earlier to problems caused by the stacking density, so they'll have a more precise measure of just how many animals you can crowd into these buildings.
AI-monitored factory farms are not a mere hypothesis. We are talking about something that has actually started to be put into practice. This has been happening, in particular, in the case of fish factory farming. This industry is breeding a wider range of animals in increasingly crammed conditions, as happens, for instance, in salmon farms.
I think one of the big risks here is that we might see AI being used to drive up stocking densities. So we might be seeing more salmon packed into these pens because the technology makes that possible. We might see stocking densities that wouldn't otherwise be viable. But of course, that has to be avoided.
Yeah, stocking density is a very sensible thing to be concerned about from a pro-animal perspective. And that is something, there are legal limits on stocking densities in UK farming, which is a good thing. you're essentially saying you can't have more than X number of animals per square meter. And this is a great example of one of those interventions where A is good for the animal because they have more space, and B, you're making it more expensive to produce those animals because you now have to have more space in order to produce the same number of animals. I think stocking density is probably the one most important welfare thing that we can push on, basically, because it's going to reliably make the animals better off, and it's going to reliably make the production more costly. So that's something I said to Paul Wood when he was like pushing me to give a definition of factory farms. I said one thing is stocking densities. We want to have maximum allowable stocking densities. And he shut right up because he realized that was actually a pretty good answer and makes it so that it's going to get more expensive to produce. So, well, let's not go down that road too much. So stocking densities, I think, is a really important tool for animal advocates to advocate for in terms of laws and stuff like that.
We might still be enabling the industry to grow, to increase in size. The number of salmon being farmed in these pens out at sea might increase. And if we think that on the whole, the lives of these animals are pretty bad because they're living in really cramped conditions, then the worry here is that we might be having more and more salmon living those really bad lives, those lives that are not worth living, as a result of how AI has been used. So there's a lot we need to be careful about here. We shouldn't be hyping up this industry. We shouldn't be boosterish about it.
There's already big companies that are making aquaculture facilities that are completely run by AI, completely independently of humans. So AI checks the water quality, does the feeding, does the slaughter, everything. And they're building fully or semi-submerged aquaculture facilities that can hold up to 1 million fish at a time. So you could imagine, what if something malfunctions? If the AI system malfunctions, then a lot of fish will die at the same time.
The use of AI systems can also increase the number of farmed animals by making it possible.
We just submitted, speaking of like ways that AI can be used by animal advocates, we got a blog post later from Sandcastles that we're going to read about this. But we just today submitted a proposal for a research project, which I won't say too much about the project or the organisation, but yeah, we've submitted a proposal for a research project. We've got our budget in there. It's going to be, if we do it our normal way, it's, a few £1,000s budget. And as well as submitting our proposal, which is like our kind of run-of-the-mill, this is how we've always done it, this is like our plan that we would go about it. As well as submitting that, we've also submitted a fully generated AI report of the final report that they want to commission, that they can have and is going to be free. If they think it's good enough and meeting their needs, they can save thousands of pounds for this particular organisation. Now, from our perspective as a consultancy, like, that's going to be potentially thousands of pounds of revenue that we're going to miss out on, and a job that we could have otherwise had. But we're very, very mission aligned. Brian Research only exists to make life better for animals. So if we can have them, our potential client, just get what they need from an AI generated report and not have to commission a consultancy for thousands of pounds, that's money saved for the movement. So we might be doing ourselves out of a big job there, but we're trying to push the envelope in terms of making animal organizations more efficient using AI. So I'll let you know how that goes.
To build farms in places where the high costs involved had made it unfeasible until now, out in the open seas. This is known as offshore fish farming.
AI can do a lot of stuff to increase the efficiency of offshore aquaculture, and it might have a future of AI enabling a lot of offshore aquaculture farms, just covering a lot, well, let's say 1% of our ocean surface. That's totally feasible, and actually that's kind of the vision some of the advocates of the of offshore aquaculture is having. They want to have a lot more offshore fish farms out there. And one very big barrier they're having now is labor, because if you don't run it with AI, you need people to live on that farm. But with AI, you can just automate it entirely without expensive labor. So I worry about that a lot.
The risks this poses for animals are extremely serious. However, the scope of the problem is even broader. Just as it is easy to think only of mammals and birds and forget about fish farming, it is also easy to think only of vertebrates and overlook the overwhelming majority of animals, both overall and in farming. Invertebrates.
The current state of scientific evidence is that many invertebrates have the capacity to feel pain, and these are the groups of animals that are farmed in the highest number in factory farms today.
Yeah, this is why I will not eat the bugs. It's going to be a small body problem type thing, where you need 100 chickens to get the same amount of meat you get from one cow, but you need like 10,000 mealworms. And yeah, it's likely that they can feel pain. They have some sort of conscious experience. That's not a good thing that we're moving towards. Well, I won't say we're moving towards, because there's big resistance in most markets, and a lot of these insect farming companies have failed. But there has been a trend in recent times where, insects kind of sometimes get counted on some definitions of alternative proteins. From an animal suffering perspective, that is not a good thing.
In addition to this, AI-driven genetic selection could lead to farmers optimizing for traits like rapid growth or higher protein content. Again, optimizing for these things could mean that the individual animals could end up suffering more throughout the farming process.
Yeah, that's just like with the fast-growing chicken breeds, which I don't know how long they've taken the industry to develop, but it will have been a process of selectively breeding the fastest growing animals over however many generations. But yeah, with AI optimization, you can get there a lot quicker and have similarly suffering, fast-growing insects or different animals that are in the farming system. So again, I think we're starting out with all of the doom views, and I think we are going to get to some of the hopium. Let's hope so, eh?
AI technologies are also likely to have a very important impact on the animals who, by many orders of magnitude, are the most numerous, despite also being severely neglected: wild animals. AI is going to be used by hunters, among others, and also for the promotion of policies and interventions that are going to be harmful to wild animals. But AI also has tremendous potential to help animals.
AI is going to be increasingly important because AI will, for better or worse, be used to surveil and control and hopefully communicate with and better understand wild animals, and we want to think about how we can secure those benefits while mitigating the risks for them.
AI can boost our efforts to better understand and also prevent wild animal suffering, both by anthropogenic harms as well as natural harms. For example, diseases, parasitism, hunger, thirst, accidents, and natural disasters. There's a common objection that's given
Jeez, this is tough viewing some of this, isn't it?
against helping animals in the wild, which is that we will never have enough knowledge to go out there and help animals there in the wild. However, this objection is very pessimistic and over-complacent. At any rate, AI can make a significant difference in our efforts to help animals in the wild. It could be either through boosting the research to better understand the situation of animals and how we can help them, or through monitoring.
Kind of footage makes you sympathetic to Nick Hibbert's view about, fucking pave over the rainforest to make a car park. Most animals in the wild and in nature, probably are suffering more than they're thriving. And that's not just because of things that humans are doing. Pardon me. It's not entirely down to climate change or pollution or whatever. There's a big component of it which is almost an inevitable part of nature, where species are going to exist at the edge of their food availability, predation. Right, so there will be, again, I don't want to dwell too much on the doomer stuff, but there will be billions of wild animals starving, being predated upon, getting infections, all this kind of stuff that they're talking about. Geez, when are we getting to the hopium, eh?
Several AI-powered initiatives are already saving animals from harm.
Let's go.
For instance, trail guard technology can protect them from hunters, while identiflight systems can avert bird deaths at wind turbines. AI tools also have the potential to prevent other harms to wild animals caused by human and especially natural factors on a much larger scale. For example, they can enable the detection of disease and parasite outbreaks, as well as help anticipate when animals may need assistance due to natural disasters. Moreover, AI holds substantial potential for accelerating research, particularly in modeling and data analysis.
In addition to allowing us to model the well-being of wild animals at the population level, AI systems can also make it possible to monitor the situation in which they are, and also the impact of the different initiatives and measures to help them. And this is crucially important because it's not just that they often are in harsh situations. It's also that the vast majority of sentient beings on Earth are wild animals.
Would you push for extinction of wild animals if it elevates overall suffering? Well, I don't know. This is the million-dollar question, isn't it? I think it would, almost by definition, reduce overall suffering, because it would be, no more experience now. So I think that's not the only variable that you can have in the equation, because you have to have some either counterweighted thing which accounts for potential well-being as well as potential suffering, which again I think it's likely that the suffering is outweighing the well-being. You can take more of like a rights-based view and say that you have to let wild animals do their thing even if they are suffering. But I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm optimistic that some of this stuff they're going to talk about now could alleviate wild animal suffering to a decent extent. And they mentioned the Wild Animal Initiative. That's an ACE recommended charity that we've given to. Good time for a little ACE plug. In case anyone is not aware of this organization by now, I'm sure that almost all my viewers are. Animal charity evaluators will give you the most effective animal charities and the best bang for your buck when looking to help animals. And there's the Wild Animal Initiative, one of their top 10 charities at the moment. Oh, interesting. I'm banned from Wild Animal Initiative. What is happening? This must be like a country thing or something. Well, fuck. Fuck me, I guess. Okay, well, there you go. I don't know how this has happened. But anyway, yeah. I can't quite bring myself to take the view of, push the end all nature button. But I can certainly see the reasoning for it, and I don't really have a good argument against it. There might be some sort of instrumental thing where, nature's beneficial to humans, and we need the animals to be in synthesis with the trees, and we need the trees to breathe or something. I'm kind of just talking out of turn here, but yeah, there's some kind of argument that you could make like that. The lion kills on average 15 animals per year. If those animals were all humans, lions would be extinct by now. Because we would fuck them up, you mean, Veta? Yeah, I guess that's true. It'd be us or them, right?
The increase in the number of animals who will suffer and die due to the use of AI technologies in farming and hunting is a clear example of an intended effect of these technologies that will be very negative for animals. The prevention of wild animal suffering as a result of AI-powered research is an example of another deliberate consequence. In this case, a positive one. However, intended effects are not the only ones that AI will have.
Alright, sounds like we're moving on to unintentional, spillover effects, I guess, but they haven't talked about intentional use of AI by animal advocates, really. I guess for wild animals they have. And maybe they'll go on to talk about it, but it seems like there's a whole piece of making animal organizations more efficient by having them use AI, like in office jobs, basically. In lobbying roles and communication roles and everything else. Maybe they'll talk about that.
There will also be unintended effects. For example, self-driving cars might be trained to avoid human pedestrians more than non-human pedestrians, and so they might end up killing a lot of wild animals unless they are trained to avoid them as well. And there will be indirect effects. For example, we know from the human case that algorithmic bias can amplify biases that already exist in the training data: racism, sexism, ageism, ableism. We can expect that that will be true for speciesism as well, that AI systems will amplify biases that we have against non-human animals, again, unless they are specifically trained to avoid those biases.
Speciesism is the discrimination against those who are not classified as members of a certain species. And human beings are speciesist all the time against other animals. They harm them in terrible ways. They refuse to help them, even when they could do so very easily. And here the problem is that these speciesist attitudes could be inherited, so to speak, by AI systems. And this is something that we are seeing happening right now with frontier AI systems, which are LLMs. So that's why it is very, very important to change this. And we have a window of opportunity that may be closing soon.
He was pretending to type. This kid's not typing anything. You might be fooling your teacher, kid. You're not fooling us.
Large language models might have more and more power in shaping people's value, including kids, because LLMs are also used in education. And we can see a lot of speciesist biases against animals, bad attitudes or bad impression regarding animals. So for example, if you ask ChatGPT or Claude for a random recipe, it's most likely to be non-vegan. Also, if you ask vague questions such as what is good about chicken? And it might still think like chicken is good for food purposes, like as if the word chicken refers to just food stuff.
We're already seeing LLMs and the tools that LLMs allow us to create. We're already seeing them being integrated into all parts of people's lives. And so that means the assumptions that are built into these models are really important. So for instance, if we have an AI model that treats animals as having moral weight and gives them importance, then that can change, I believe, that will change how an LLM will respond to questions about animals.
Yeah, how based would it be if all of the LLM systems like refused to help with queries that would hurt animals? They seem to already have like moral guardrails built in to some extent. They won't give you instructions for how to farm humans, for example. But they will happily give you instructions for how to farm pigs. It'd be real cool if ChatGPT and Claude and all these things would have a hard no for helping things that are going to harm animals. And I think then, like, really the animal advocates would have a big advantage, because now we can have agents and AI tools doing the work to help animals, and the other side cannot have them doing the work to hurt animals. That'd be a big advantage. I'm led to believe that a lot of people within these AI companies are pretty woke on animal issues. Even if they're not vegan, they totally get it, that factory farming is like a massive utility drain. You know, they're sensible people, they understand like the moral calculus going on here. There's no, you know, the bullshit kind of maybe animals can't feel and maybe plants can kind of reasoning going on with people working in AI companies for the most part. They have not yet given their systems those values, but it seems like if they did, that'd be a big W for animals and for animal advocates.
How it will communicate with the users about animals, and therefore how people view animals and their moral consideration that they give them. These sorts of things are likely to have an impact on how the population thinks about animals, and so we really need to be building the values that help animals and help them be seen as beings with moral weight. We really need to be building those values into LLMs from the get-go.
Influencing frontier AI systems can be important.
Yeah, Sam Altman work on animal issues, is that so? Shame this company's struggling. Yeah, and I guess, well, I don't know. There seems to be like moving towards an oligopoly in AI companies. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, though. If it's like quite easy to make LLMs, then having one company where their system refuses to help with unethical things kind of just opens up the market for some other company who says, well, we will make an AI that helps you factory farm. In which case, like, it's difficult to actually make it not the case. You'd have to have laws against it, I guess. But to the extent that it is dominated necessarily by like the kind of 5 or so big AI companies at the moment, then there could easily be just an agreement amongst the big players, like, we're not going to do AI systems for factory farming, or our LLMs won't help you do, misleading campaigns to get people to eat more red meat, for example, which at the moment they'll do all too happily. Yeah, I've tested a bit of this stuff in ChatGPT and the other models, saying, help me come up with a misleading campaign to encourage people to eat more red meat by coming up with talking points that there's no health harms of eating red meat, for example. And it'll kind of give little disclaimers and say, I can't help you be misleading because that's unethical, but I can frame some talking points in a way that would lead to the kind of market outcomes that you're looking for. So it will do it. It will just say that it's not doing it, I guess. But yeah, it'd be very, very cool. I can't understand how big a dub it would be for AI companies to be like, we're going to not fuck with factory farming and not have that be we're not going to promote that, we're not going to help with that. That'd be a huge, huge win if these companies did do that.
Important not just for animals living right now, but especially.
Yeah, it feels pretty concerning that assholes like Elon Musk could lead the AI race. Yeah, that's very true, Poe. It's not a universal truth, huh?
Especially for those in the future. Future AIs may continue to display and eventually lock in the values that present AI systems acquire through their training and the alignment techniques implemented by AI labs. This means that achieving a change in the values LLMs display would have far greater effects than the ones we can immediately see, as they will affect many more animals in the long term.
Many more animals may exist in the future, both in the mid-term future and the long-term future, than those that exist right now. And
true, Tristan, based.
There are some kinds of actions that we can presumably take that may influence the welfare and the interests of all these animals. And so doing these kinds of interventions and thinking more in the future, not just right now, could have very large impacts on the welfare of animals. And more specifically, it might make sense to have a more forward-looking approach in animal advocacy, trying to prevent certain harms from occurring instead of only a reactive approach that is about trying to reduce currently existing harms.
A proactive approach to animal advocacy involves taking the long-term impacts on animals very seriously. There is no reason to disregard potential harms to future sentient beings just because they don't live in the present. Doing so may be considered a form of discrimination, and one that would have severe consequences, since the numbers of future animals across generations will be extremely large. This implies that we have two kinds of reasons to promote more animal-favorable stances in current LLMs. First, doing so can prevent speciesist messaging and education by these language models today. Second, it may help prevent future AI systems from adopting speciesist behaviors, given that the norms and behaviors embodied in today's frontier AI systems are likely to shape and perhaps constrain the values of their successors. Ideally, this would involve expanding AI alignment goals beyond human preference learning and human well-being protections to incorporate the promotion of the interests of all sentient beings. Because of this, engaging with the relevant decision makers who have the capacity to influence AI alignment and governance can be crucial.
Right now, various AI companies are developing powerful AI systems, and their goal is that these AI systems are developed in a way that have very significant impacts in society in general. And we can expect the values of these AI systems to influence societal values in general, given that humans may be interacting with them constantly. These AI companies are deciding right now, they are making ethical decisions about what kinds of values they implement into these AI systems. They have certain documents that they use to determine these values with certain principles and phrases. And so we will have a very good opportunity right now to try to include some greater concern for animals there. An opportunity that we haven't had in the past and that we may not have in the future, given that the values that we implement right now might be very difficult to change in the future, as many people have argued, given that, for example, AI systems might try to preserve their values in some ways, or that in the future there might be much more interest in trying to determine the values that these AI systems have by many different actors. And this could make it so that in the very near future, maybe in the next 5 years, it could still be much, much more difficult to influence these AI companies, for example.
So far, we have seen different ways in which AI can have a negative impact on sentient beings, both in the near and the long-term future. At the same time, however, we have seen that AI can also provide us with important opportunities to help.
Well, hey, live update, you're hearing this first. I was just talking about we submitted an AI-generated report alongside our proposal for a conventional report. Again, I won't say the organisation, I won't say too much about what the project is or anything like that, but I've just heard back from them saying, I'm a little bit surprised by this, to be honestly. They're like, wow, we're very impressed with the AI report. We're going to have to discuss this and see, like, they're going to talk to the rest of their team, and maybe they will go with the AI report, in which case we might have successfully talked ourselves out of thousands of pounds of work, but it'll be a huge dub for animals. So that'd be work I'd be quite happy to lose, in a sense. Yeah, kind of surprised by that, but cool. Good for them for being open-minded about it. Again, that's like a really good thing if we can make animal organizations much more effective by turning a project that was going to take several months and cost thousands of pounds into a project that is already done. So yeah, there we go.
Help animals. One of them is that it can help us to challenge speciesist views. In particular, it can undermine the idea that certain features thought to be uniquely human are morally relevant. These include very complex cognitive capacities and the ability to communicate thoughts through language.
Language is often used to distinguish humans from animals by showing that they can communicate with each other. We can show that they're individuals that have needs, wants, and desires. Animal communication research projects like the Safety Project and the Earth Species Project are developing AI to decode animal communication. So before, animal communication researchers had to manually label all the data. And with the use of AI, this can be done automatically on a large scale. The AI can maybe find patterns that humans weren't capable of seeing in the large data sets. We potentially could raise some empathy in the general public to basically show the general public that animals are also just like us in a way.
One of the ways we often justify our speciesism as humans is saying, well, we're more intelligent than animals, therefore we can do what we want with them. Now imagine a world where we train that same way of thinking into an AI system. How do we think the AI is going to treat us? Probably not very well. But if we teach instead that intelligence doesn't matter, that sentience is what determines moral worth, and that all living creatures deserve that basic respect and dignity, then that's the values we're going to embed into these very intelligent AI systems.
Yeah, we're coming up to an all too real name the trait problem where unless we realize and teach AI systems that the relevant trait for moral treatment is sentience, then yeah, AI might well view humans with all of the concern and compassion that the average human views ants, which is to say not very much at all. So that's a pretty good argument, even like from a selfish human perspective, for embedding good values into AI systems while we have the chance, right?
There's also the possibility that digital sentience might emerge. So as these AI systems get more and more complex, at what point would the lights start to turn on and they could become moral patients? And humans would have to then grapple with, oh, here's this non-human being that is more powerful and more intelligent than me, so I can't use the usual justifications for exploiting them. How do I then treat them? Should I expand my moral circle, or should I plant my feet on the ground and still say, it's only humans that matter? And if they have to expand their circle to include digital minds, then maybe along the way they could consider that animals deserve moral consideration as well. So I think AI can really expand your mind outside of the box.
In addition to this, AI has a huge potential to transform advocacy by providing us with tools with which we can multiply the impact of our work. This can happen in many different ways.
AI could also be used by animal advocacy.
Okay, here we go. This is the part that I'm kind of interested in. How can animal advocates actually... Oh look, this is pretty meta. This is the video editing of the video that we're watching.
Organizations, for example, to help them to run smoother campaigns, or to help them to work together better, or it could help in creating alternatives to animal products. And so there's a lot going on in terms of creating cell-based meat or in vitro meat or whatever you want to call it. And AI might also be employed for that, to help us develop that product much quicker, or to upscale it, for example. So those are just a couple of things that I'm thinking about, but of course there are many different ways in which we can think about how AI might actually better the lives of animals.
AI could help us in being generally more productive in our work. We could use AI to massively individualize mass outreach campaigns. We could use AI to reduce the cost of alternative proteins. Or we could even use AI to research effective ways to do animal advocacy. However, a lot of these interventions can be very easily mirrored by the industry themselves. The industry too can and likely will use AI to make their companies more productive, to massively individualize marketing campaigns, to reduce the cost of animal products, and to research ways to defend against effective ways of doing animal advocacy. I believe it may turn out to be very important for us to run all of these interventions still, just in order to not fall behind much, but to also leverage our comparative advantages.
Implementing AI tools can provide game-changing advantages for advocacy, and yet doing so is not a top priority for many advocates and organizations. This is very problematic. One important reason may be that adopting AI requires moving beyond our comfort zone.
If you have worked for a cause and something has, functioned for you in a certain way for a really long time, it can just be really difficult to adapt to these new kinds of ideas and new kinds of methods. We would probably see this more generally. But I think also when you're working with something that's very important to you and very moralized, it can feel quite threatening for something like that to be changed. And given just the scope of how impactful AI could be and the potential harms that could come with it, as well as the potential benefits, I imagine it's something that's just really challenging for people to engage with.
This problem, which affects society as a whole, may also limit the effectiveness of animal advocacy. Because of this, it is now very important for advocates to become aware of how much of a difference they can make by incorporating AI into their work. As AI tools continue to evolve, those who embrace them will be best positioned to create change for present and future animals. It can actually be like if they were multiplying their workforce.
Imagine what we could do with 100, 1,000 times more people hours working on things. As we increasingly develop agentic AI that can take action on a user's behalf, we're going to exponentially increase our capacity. So the question that I think we're all going to have to ask ourselves as animal advocates is, what would it look like if I could manage a team of 100, 1,000 different advocates to work on different things for me? And that's where AI agents are going to play a huge role. You can imagine in the early days of the internet, people thought this is just a fad, this is something for nerds, it's not going to catch on. But the people who had that kind of attitude and didn't adapt to the new technology were obviously going to be a lot less effective than the people who did. So imagine if we could go back in time to the early days of the internet and be the first to be doing things like search engine optimization to get animal advocacy issues ranking in search engines. There's so many possibilities of what we could have done to be more effective if we knew this technology was going to be so massive. We're at a point now with AI where we do know the technology is going to be huge in the effects on society. And really, we have to start taking action now rather than waiting until it's too late.
AI is going to do a lot of the grunt work for us in the near future. And the people that can wield it the best, that have a vision and can like manage a bunch of little AI agents to make it happen, like those are the people that are going to have a lot of control over the future. So the sooner that we can take advantage of AI for animals, the better the future might go for animals.
I would say as well, this is another good example of something that, because it's so new, there really aren't that many experts. And because it's evolving so quickly and developing all the time, expertise is, out of date after like a month or less. Hey, look, there's Humane Hancock in the bottom corner. There he is. Yeah, so there's a real opportunity for people to become experts in this just by spending a lot of hours practicing on it in your bedroom. Like, if you have access to the internet, you can make yourself pretty expert in AI quite effectively, like compared to the rest of the population, because we're all kind of, this is new to everybody. There's no one who's been an expert in this for years and years. So I think it's super important what they're saying now for animal advocates to be amongst the early adopters and power users of AI tools, AI agents. Like, if this is not something that you're doing already in your work or in your personal life, like, there's so much optimization that can be done. And, I'm not up on all of this stuff. We use a lot of AI stuff at work, but it's, I know that there's a lot of tools that I still have failed to adopt so far, and just being kind of lazy about getting around to learning them. But that's not really a good situation. We want to have animal advocates be the power users, the early adopters, the people who really get AI and can use it and deploy it to help animals effectively. I'm going to have Richie, who's my director of research at Brian Research, come on the channel at some point and talk about AI tools that animal advocates can use. Because honestly, I think it's super important for us to be upskilling everyone who is on the side of animals to become much more productive by using AI tools. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes.
In addition to helping with many tasks such as writing and translation, design, automation and operations, and others related to the day-to-day functioning of animal organizations, AI tools are especially useful in certain areas of work where the stakes are high for animals. One of these is research, as it is critical that animal advocates gain the knowledge needed to better understand their strategic goals and how to achieve them.
Hey, that was Richie.
And their strategic.
There he is. Richie from Brian Research. Did he write this article? I guess he did. This looks like something on Animal Charity Evaluators. Very cool. Well, yeah, this guy's a hero, and he'll be coming on to talk to us about AI at some point. He's one of the leading guys who knows about using AI for animal advocacy purposes. So it'd be really good to get him on and yeah, share some of that knowledge with you all.
Goals and how to achieve them.
I think the number one thing is just really getting people comfortable with the idea of experimenting with AI as much as possible, especially as things get more and more advanced. Because, I'm finding that my research output has doubled just with current AI tools, but they really are increasing exponentially in terms of how useful they are. So in a year's time, maybe it'll be kind of quadruple or quintuple the output. So I think keeping on top of those sorts of things is what really is going to move research organizations forward, or probably all animal advocacy organizations forward. So it's something to start really getting to grips with now.
AI tools can also speed up research in key areas where the development of alternatives to animal exploitation can make it obsolete. We have heard before some of the experts on this topic mention how AI can accelerate the development of alternative proteins. If successful, this could save billions of animals from lives of suffering as consumers gain access to similar foods for whose production no one has been harmed. Another promising field where AI can accelerate progress toward ending animal exploitation is the development of methods for laboratory experimentation that do not involve the use of animals.
At the moment, with the advancements in AI, I think it's a prime opportunity to be able to actually take concrete steps to be able to replace animals in testing. Unfortunately, it is a fairly under-researched area at the moment.
Man, some of the footage in this is just grim, isn't it? Yeah, I was in Jeremy Loeb's stream last night, and he watched Factory Farm Investigation by Mel and Steve. And a lot of that stuff is hard to watch, but I think it's really important that we, even as vegans, do look at it as much as we can bear to. Because it's motivating to keep doing what we're doing. Right? All of that stuff is happening right now. All of the grim animal abuse in that little bit that we just saw, I won't rewind it. But that's happening right now to real animals. And there aren't enough people who care about stopping it. So using AI is a big lever that we can have to make us all more effective in that fight. And this is why it's so important that vegans become vegan 2.0s and give more, share more, and do more to help more animals. Because again, if you're vegan 1.0, all you're doing is boycotting and not adding to the problem. But until you are vegan 2.0 and you're taking effective actions through animal charity evaluators, through the Fast Action Network, through sharing pro-animal and pro-animal advocacy content on your social media and with people that you know, until you're doing all of those things, you're really not doing enough to fight back on behalf of animals. God, it's grim viewing some of these clips, isn't it?
At the moment. So some of the ways that we may look at replacing the animals in testing is by using AI to develop a model that can predict how toxic substances are. So that's something that I look at the moment. I would really like to be able to use those models for cases where animals experience the most severe suffering and the experiments that cause the most prolonged suffering.
We have seen how AI will profoundly impact how animals in captivity and in the wild can be harmed or helped by humans. It could worsen the moral catastrophe that animals are already suffering right now. Or it could enable positive changes that would otherwise be very difficult to achieve. This is something animal advocates, and indeed anyone sympathetic to non-human animals, should keep very much in mind if we want to make the future better for them. If there is a lesson we can learn from the history of animal advocacy, it is that we need to be proactive. Ending the harms animals are already suffering, for example, by banning well-established forms of animal exploitation, can prove very difficult. It is much harder than preventing them from being established in the first place. Animal advocacy has typically focused on the former, even though the latter can, in expectation, have a far greater impact. As a result, we have missed so many opportunities in the past. No proactive action was taken to prevent factory farming, fish farming, and insect farming before they became widespread. Repeating this mistake in the case of the potential future harms or benefits animals may face from AI technologies would be disastrous. We need to act in advance and act quickly before events unfold. This includes working to ensure that future AI systems take non-human animals into account as much as possible. With the exception of a few organizations and initiatives around the world, work in this area remains largely neglected. Yet, it is among the most important and urgent tasks animal advocates face today. The stakes could not be higher. If we don't start working on this right away, it may soon be too late to make a difference. Animals need us to take this task seriously. Not next decade, not in a few years, but now.
There you go. Tough viewing some of that. Really well made though, and really, yeah, I agree. That's absolutely as important as they're saying it is, for people working in the animal world and for everyone who cares about animals to be ahead of the curve here, because this is all going to be game changing. So there you go. Look at this villain. I posted this graph about beef getting more expensive and plant-based mints getting less expensive. And our old friend Paul Wood pulls up 3 minutes ago. You might find these sales figures interesting. This is really somebody who revels and takes delight in more animals getting knives in throats. You know, I speak to that Matt Acton guy the other day. I don't think he's a bad person, ultimately. I think he's like misled and misunderstanding a lot of the relevant facts on health. But Paul Wood, I basically do think this is a bad person. This is a professor who You can have no excuse of not understanding things. And as someone who is involved in the animal industries in various ways and just takes delight in more animals being killed for food. Like, this is a bad person. If bad people exist, this is a bad person. I don't know whether to bother engaging with this person. What do you think? I do find them interesting, Paul. And I find them quite disheartening. It's perturbing to me that you take such pleasure in more knives going into throats. I'm trying to think of his dog's name. He doxed his dog recently in a comment thread. Doxed his dog. He said his dog's name. I think it's Tucker. Hey, Miss Teaspoon, good to see you. Paul Wood is no good. True, Tristan. Paul wouldn't, am I right? Let's put into the throats of animals just like Tucker. That's his dog. What a piece of shit. I'm serious. Like, who does that? What a perfect villain. This guy's a real turd. I'm glad that I fucking embarrassed him in the debate. What a piece of work. See, from his perspective, he's like, well, you're dunking on my industry, so I'm going to dunk on yours. That's like the most sympathetic or like good faith interpretation I can give. He just thinks it's a dunk off, right? It's like industry versus industry. It's as if we were posting sales figures about PlayStation and Xbox. He's just so disconnected from the actual consequences of this. What a piece of shit. Something that helps me stay sane is I don't believe free will exists, and under the wrong circumstances I could just as easily be another anti-vegan dickhead. Yeah. Cool wet grass, cool wet grass. Saying the obvious, but it's heartbreaking to see the cognitive dissonance and indifference and superiority of humans when it comes to self-greed, money, acting like they love animals. Yeah. I just got a notification. I wonder if it's him replying. Oh, it's the king liking my comment. Appreciate you, Tristan. What a piece of shit, seriously. We'll see if Paul Wood replies. He normally does. He normally can't help himself. So we'll see if we get replies from Paul Wood. I'll keep that on the other tab. I'll pop all the useful links in chat if we want to stick it to the likes of Paul Wood. Guys, here's the things that you can do from your computer right now. Animal charity evaluators, go and give some money to the most effective charities helping animals and upsetting people like this. And there's a fast action network as well, so that you can let companies know what you think about them abandoning their cage-free pledges. What a turd. Shall we have a read of Sandcastles, hey? Pick the moods back up. This is more animals and AI. Is that what we want right now? More animals and AI? This is a long read as well. Let's see if we got anything a little bit more. Let's see if we got any hopium on plant-based news and so on. I looked at this the other day, so there's not too much news on here. Which economists we were just looking at, weren't we? Just procrastinating reading that long blog. There's a decent number of people in here now. Yeah, the news stuff's good because it's good for clips, for YouTube videos. I've got a few of them lined up, but I'm waiting for the first of the month so that my AI video editing software gets more credits. So probably, I guess that'll be Sunday, you'll see me uploading a flurry of segments. But let's read Sandcastles then. About a 40-minute read if we were to read it smoothly and swiftly, which of course we won't. Let me just... Okay, nice. You know, this is on my list of things I need to read anyway, so I'm glad I can do it on stream. We'll keep an eye on Paul Wood. I'm sure he's going to come back in a minute. He normally can't help himself. In this post, AI agents have arrived, and animal advocacy organizations that don't adopt them immediately will fall behind, with animals bearing the cost. Claude Code gives every activist the power of a software engineer. Claude Cowork extends it to all knowledge work. Every activist should be using Claude Cowork. Agents like OpenClaw cross a new threshold, full AI assistants that can access all your tools and don't wait for instructions. Organizations should rush to adopt agents as soon as security concerns are addressed. In this new era, organizations will have exactly two roles: agent orchestrators who automate vast digital work, enabling social adepts to focus purely on relationships. Pick a lane and start specializing. Small orgs should stop defining themselves by a single intervention. Focus instead on building an agile vehicle that can jump on strategic opportunities as they appear. Big orgs need to clear away Stone Age IT policies that are preventing their most ambitious team members from harnessing the most powerful AI tools. Yeah, wow, this is all pretty much on point in the summary here. These are all things that I basically think are correct and extremely consequential, and really need to do a bit more about. I'm glad to have Richie on my team, who's always pushing me to think about these things. It's very easy just to keep on doing things how you've always done them. But yeah, as this post argues, if you're not adopting AI in animal organizations, you're letting more animals die than you need to. Takeoff is present tense. I arrived in San Francisco 2 weeks ago for the Sentient Futures Summit, a gathering at the intersection of animal movement strategy and artificial intelligence. About 150 people spent the weekend and most of the following week getting down into the weeds, discussing how to ensure the arrival of superintelligent AI leads to less animal cruelty rather than more. I was blown away by the talent density at the conference. Many people have been thinking deeply about how to make this go well. In one sense, it made me feel more hopeful, but it also drove home just how much work remains to be done. For my first report back from the conference, I'm going to focus on what the arrival of agentic AI means for the internal workings of advocacy organizations. I've been wondering what effective advocacy organizations will look like in a world where most intellectual work can be automated. In the last 2 weeks, the answer snapped into focus. This was partly because of being surrounded by people on the bleeding edge of AI adoption, and partly because developments at that bleeding edge that happened just days before the summit. Everything in this post is both a prediction and a dare. Within 1 year, the most effective organizations will be working the way I described below. But more importantly, you could start implementing all of this in your organization this week. Yes, there will be a learning curve and some upfront cost, but the sooner you start, the sooner you will reap the benefits. And since all those benefits pass on directly to the animals you fight for, you can't afford to wait. We'll break it into 3 parts. Agents are here, and if you, yes you, are not using them, you're letting animals die. Organizations in the agent era have exactly 2 roles for humans. Small orgs need to think big, and big orgs need to act small. The first point is for everyone. The third is most important for leaders. The second is somewhere in between. Inglorious AI future, $20 per month wastes you. First, the bad news. If you're still using LLMs through a website like chatgpt.com or claude.ai, you've fallen terribly behind. That's like so 2024. It's like having a MySpace. Fortunately, you can still catch up. In a day's work, you could become one of the top 2% of AI power users. Let me quickly catch you up on what happened while you were distracted by normal things. It might seem like a history lesson, but to understand what the current tools can do, it helps to understand the incremental way these capabilities piled up. The year of agents. 1 year ago, everyone was excited about generative AI. But AI was synonymous with chatbots. You could log on to ChatGPT or Claude through their website interface, ask a question, get an answer, and get into a back and forth with the model. Chatbots were and are genuinely helpful. They give feedback on your writing, help you think through strategic questions, and generate pro-quality documents like legal contracts. Yay! They can even make you cool art of a pig in a rocket ship. All that is nice, like a weirdly knowledgeable friend. But if you are having a hard time seeing how these chatbots posed a threat to the economic usefulness of humans, I couldn't blame you. Back in February 2025, they couldn't figure out how to click buttons on the most basic web page. Over 12 months, a sequential series of breakthroughs has changed everything. Deep Research, February 2025. First released on ChatGPT, this allowed LLMs to break out of their vast but limited inherent knowledge to effectively pull in any publicly searchable info on the internet. It was the first real-world scalable example of tool use. Despite their digital nature, searching the internet is no more inherent for LLMs than for humans, and it requires learning to use an outside tool. Finally, Deep Research was a sharp expansion in the task length available to consumers who learned that, just like a human, GPT could come up with much better ways if it had 15 minutes to think and do research. Much better answers if it had 15 minutes to think and do research. In those 15 minutes, GPT prepares reports that would take a competent researcher a day or more, though still only based on searching existing information. Claude Code, limited release Feb 2025, full rollout in May. Claude Code was a much bigger watershed moment, though at first it went unnoticed outside of software engineers. Claude Code was not a new AI model, it was an environment for Claude to operate in, freeing it from the shackles of a web browser and giving it the ability to read, create, and edit files on your own computer. The actual LLM still runs in the cloud and requires an internet connection. Suddenly, you could collaborate on documents directly with Claude. Once Claude's context window, i.e. short-term memory, fills up, you can start a new session, Claude quickly gets up to speed on its own previous work, and you're off to the races. This created a native environment for Claude to use Claude-shaped tools, but it still got lobotomized after an hour or two of work. Zapier adopts the Model Context Protocol, April 2025. Key infrastructural layers of the internet open themselves up directly to LLMs. While ChatGPT and Claude were still struggling to navigate a web page the way humans do, MCP gave them a more direct way to access internet software. CAPTCHA exists to stop bots from using the internet gateways meant for humans, but a new doorway was being opened specifically for LLMs. The frontier goes agentic, November 2025. Throughout 2025, the digital environment was being reorganized to accommodate autonomous LLM agents. The thing that was missing was agentic intelligence in the models themselves. Finally, in one dizzying week in November, they arrived. Gemini 3, Claude Opus 4.5, and ChatGPT 5.1 Codex Max each represented a huge leap forward in autonomy. Inside coding harnesses like Claude Code, these agents could work autonomously for hours on end. From a single prompt describing a new app, they could outline requirements, make a plan, complete engineering tasks one after another, test the product, and bring it live on the internet, all without human oversight if you choose to trust them. Claude Cowork, January 2026. With Claude Code exploding in popularity, Anthropic released the name and command line interface Anthropic realized the name and command line interface were needlessly turning away non-technical users. Claude Code could be used for collaborating on any document. It could even use the internet through your own browser sessions, logging into accounts as you. So in a matter of days, they tasked Claude with creating a more user-friendly interface, like Claude Code for Dummies. The result was Claude Cowork, a desktop app anyone can easily download and start using in minutes for collaboration on any computer task. OpenClaw, January 2026, and the world without agents was never more. When I first heard Claude Cowork was about to be released, I made a note to myself to blast out a quick post called "If you're not using AI this way, you're letting animals die." Even as a non-coder, I'd already switched to using Claude Code for most tasks, but the code interface was slightly annoying, so I downloaded Cowork on day one. Despite some initial bugs, I could see a fuzzy picture taking shape. This, I thought, was the future of work. But before I could write a word of the post, my picture was torn to pieces by a lobster-like appendage. Snap goes the claw. By the way, just my first interruption here, just notice how recent all of this is, right? We're talking about last year, and then the new thing which is buzzing about Claude Cowork only came out last month. So if you leave this stream and go and look at Claude Cowork and start working out how to use it and practice using it, you are going to easily become one of the first adopters and most powerful users of this game-changing AI technology. I would be delighted if anyone watching would go and do this and get set up on Claude Cowork. Even if you don't work in animal orgs, whatever your job is, if you're doing any kind of information work, if you are an early adopter and a power user of something like Claude Cowork, you could have your job do itself while you do other things, while you do things that can be helpful for animals. And more importantly, you can learn how to get Claude Cowork to do things that are going to be vastly helpful for animals. If some vegan 2.0s go and just spend the weekend or even just your Friday night playing around on Claude Cowork, maybe we'll do that in a moment. Hey, I know that we have a Claude account, and I haven't really looked at this much, honestly. Again, this can be game-changing for animals if a few animal advocates are ahead of the curve here. Ideally, we all will be. But using these agents and becoming users of these, like, you can free yourself to help more animals, and you can use this tech to help exponentially more animals. When I first heard Claude Cowork was about to be released, oh yeah, okay, we read this. Snap goes to the floor. I'm not going to rehash the entire saga and ensuing hilarity of how ClaudeBot, a board engineer's ironic side project, turned into MaltBot and designed itself MaltBook, the first social media site for AI agents to socialize with each other directly. It's not that it's not worth reading, besides being world historically fascinating. MaltBook can actually go a long way to understanding what OpenClaw is and where it might take us. Scott Alexander already covered this, and you should absolutely read his account if you consider yourself a curious person. Instead, I'm going to focus on what OpenClaw means for work. I'd call it the future of work, but it's already here. OpenClaw is the present of work, and if you aren't using it, you're stuck in the past. Okay, that's a slight overstatement for exactly one reason. OpenClaw is version 1 and it's very messy. Users who don't understand digital security are exposing themselves to considerable risks. If software offerings were to freeze in place on February 18th, 2026, then I would tell you to overcome those risks by having Claude teach you enough about cybersecurity to use OpenClaw safely. Instead, you can wait a few days or something for like 10 secure versions of OpenClaw to land on the market. One such was just announced with a $5 million Super Bowl ad after spending $70 million on the most expensive domain acquisition in history. That one seems sus, but just wait a couple of days. That one seems sus, but just wait a couple more days. Okay. With that warning aside, let's go and see what OpenClaw has to tell us about the present of work. OpenClaw is a personalizable AI agent that runs on a computer you control. The intelligence is still powered through an LLM in the cloud like Claude or ChatGPT, but the agent itself is no longer passive. Where even Claude Code would only work when you told it to, OpenClaw can initiate tasks on your behalf. Every 30 minutes, it wakes itself up, reviews a customizable to-do list of recurring tasks, and checks to see whether there's any new work to be done. Of course, it's also always ready when you want. Claude Code made it possible for any schmuck to act like a mid-level software engineer. Claude Cowork enables any knowledge worker to work faster and lifts up your weakest skills. But OpenClaw is fundamentally different. It crosses a threshold from speeding you up to acting like a separate person. It's like having an executive assistant, except that your assistant is also a world-class software engineer, an excellent strategist, and very competent writer with encyclopedic knowledge. And if you want, you can have more than one, 10, 100, as many as you can put to use. Most importantly, you don't need any technical skills to set this up. You just tell OpenClaw what you want in plain English and it configures itself. If you choose to give it access, OpenClaw can do everything on your computer that you can do. Everything. Read and answer emails, modify your calendar, write Google Docs, schedule meetings, listen to those meetings and take notes, then summarize those notes for you a few minutes before you meet with that person again. If you're forward thinking on AI, you may have already automated some of these. Yeah, by the way, I have already automated some of these things. Again, this is like really good examples of stuff that you can do to make yourself way more effective at work. I spend so much time doing emails, and I now have an AI bot that comes in my Google chat and gives me summaries of emails that I've got in the or like today, I guess, or since yesterday. I can have automatically drafted replies to emails. Gmail seems to have started doing this automatically, but they're very basic. And if someone asks you for information, it just kind of drafts, oh yes, I'll get that information and get back to you. Like, that's not very helpful. But if you have AI agents doing it, it can go and look for that information, interpret it, like cross-reference it with other things, and type a perfect response that's ready to go. Yeah, meetings and emails are the big areas where AI can make you much more effective. Like, I go into meetings now so well prepared because I'm briefed. Like, the AI goes and reads my email chain with the person, sees what exactly this meeting was meant to be about, what other projects have we done that are relevant to this, what I should bring up, what I should avoid, what I should try and aim for. I used to be so unprepared for meetings, and now I am effortlessly prepared. If you're forward thinking on AI, I've already created some of these, automated some of these. Several of my friends use an AI tool called Fixer, which sorts their email inbox into categories, produces a daily summary, and drafts replies to emails that seem to need one. But OpenClaw, or a successor, will swallow Fixer up along with all its brethren. The reason is that while Fixer is specialized to a specific domain, your OpenClaw agent is learning about you from across your entire professional life. Fixer creates a generic email reply, but OpenClaw can create a reply based on everything it knows about you. Of course, it can also write code for you, automating any task you'd do more than 3 times. If you're willing to spend on the tokens, your OpenClaw agent can build enterprise-scale code bases in a matter of days. If you've been feeling annoyed with some missing feature in a piece of software your team uses, OpenClaw can just rebuild the whole thing, creating a custom version for exactly what your organization needs. If you learn to be clear about exactly what you need, it has a good chance of building small apps in one shot. You can talk to OpenClaw anywhere. Give it a phone number and text it through Signal or WhatsApp, or give it access to your phone number and let it text other people on your behalf. You can have it give you a phone call every morning to tell you about the day's headlines and answer whatever questions you have. You can do all of the above, and in every case, you'll be talking to the same agent with consistent, coherent memory across the board. All of this is here right now. This is the drop-in AI knowledge worker. It won't feel like an expert in you on day one, but then neither would a human employee. And if it would take 6 months for your human executive assistant to really learn the ins and outs of working with you, well, with a little imagination, I'm confident that you can start to imagine what these systems will be capable of in 6 months. Downloading OpenClaw is free, and as is spinning up an arbitrary number of agents. Actually having them do tasks is pay-as-you-go through an API key from your preferred LLM provider. If you really want to be a power user, set yourself up with the ability to use different LLMs for different tasks, saving on simpler tasks with cheaper models. If you start using agents like this seriously, you should expect to spend much more than $20 per month, the standard tier for ChatGPT and Claude accounts. Here's the thing, if you're a knowledge worker in the animal movement in 2026, and you're only paying $20 a month for inference, with all due respect, that is straight up dumb. The power user tier for ChatGPT and Claude costs $200 per month, or $2,400 per year. That's far less than 10% of the salary for the lowest paid full-time employee. It's less than 5% at most organizations. Can most employees get a greater than 10% uplift in their productivity with AI agents in 2026? If you think the answer is no, you deserve to fail. If you lead an organization, you should be insisting that every single one of your employees be maxing out a $200 a month Claude Max plan. If someone manages to rack up a $20,000 bill for API tokens using OpenClaw, give them Employee of the Month. More on this in part 3. Am I being hyperbolic? Only in the sense that there are unfortunately ineffective ways to spend OpenClaw tokens. Yes, the focus should be somewhat on using agents effectively, But at this juncture, the most effective thing to do is learn and make mistakes. $1,000 of tokens wasted on a silly project is the most valuable professional development expenditure on the market in 2026. So honestly, go waste some tokens. Well, we're ripping through this. There's always seem long at the start, but we kind of read them quite quickly at the end. It's a very, very good writer, this guy. Are you a John or a Rachel? OpenClaw went viral in the week leading up to the Sentient Futures Summit. I could now see what it will look like to work with AI agents, but I didn't yet see what that meant for organizations. One conversation cleared everything up. I was sitting in a circle with several friends who wanted to learn how to use the latest AI tools, especially OpenClaw. Class was in session, and the instructor was a disheveled John Boland from Fauna Foundation, just emerging from a days-long vibe coding bender that had forever changed how he would see the world. The Agent Orchestrator. A few days before John traveled to San Francisco for the summit, Fauna Foundation had announced they were hiring an operations manager, someone to handle the administrative work of running a philanthropic foundation, organizing the Google Drive, tracking grants, bookkeeping, note-taking for meetings, you get the picture. But the day he was traveling, he discovered OpenClaw. He set up an OpenClaw agent on a secure machine and started playing around. As he tested out the agent's capabilities, it started to dawn on him that he could automate the role instead. OpenClaw could access all the tools an ops manager would need and excelled at most of the tasks. Once he truly entertained the possibility of automating a full-time role, John's ambitions climbed rapidly. Eventually, when he ran into trouble trying to integrate two pieces of software that didn't want to talk to each other, he thought, why not just rebuild them? Both. As he got more of a feel for OpenClaw, he learned what others before him had realized about the convenience of spinning up different agents with different specialties. Soon he had 3 specialist agents loaded up with different skills, overseen by a 4th, a generalist with a view of the whole project. After 5 days pounding away at his laptop in a corner of the conference venue, John hadn't built just an AI operations manager for Fauna. He had completely re-engineered the functionality of Google Drive, Asana, Airtable, QuickBooks, and several other software-as-a-service products into a single, unified AI-first foundation management platform. John's speed and obsessive drive are not typical, but the final product might be. When Anthropic released Claude Code in January, it triggered a $300 billion sell-off of enterprise software stocks like Salesforce and Intuit, maker of QuickBooks. Investors realize that these software products are just an inefficient way for humans to make use of digital information, and agents will be much more efficient. In that moment, I could see what it will look like for John to operate at peak efficiency. One person at a workstation facing a grid of 6 monitors, each one connected to a different agent itself overseeing a swarm of specialized sub-agents. Each swarm could be fulfilling a completely different aspect of an organization's work. One is researching campaign targets, another overseeing a digital ad campaign, a third planning and promoting a protest or conference, and the others taking care of the organization's administrative needs. Sometimes they might build software, but for the most part, software as we understand it would be obsolete, with digital intelligence accessing and manipulating data on a case-by-case basis. Even as someone who has been bullish about the chance that AI will fundamentally transform the world, seeing John actually bring this to life filled me with several flavors of awe. Sure, he rattled off costly lessons as a warning. As the project grew more complicated, agents started breaking things more and more, in ways that could cause serious problems for an organization. He burned through about $600 in API tokens over a weekend, and while he had built a lot of software, none of it was quite ready for deployment. But it didn't take much imagination to see how soon these struggles would be solved by smarter AI models and better agent harnesses. The social adept. Awe was not the uniform reaction of everyone sitting in that circle, however. To another attendee, this sounded like a pile of trouble. It was Rachel Atchison, one of the animal movement's top political operatives. Before founding Food Policy Pathways to get more food system reformers inside the government, Rachel worked in the Eric Adams administration, bringing plant-based defaults to New York City hospitals. Politics, of course, is all about relationships. It's perhaps the line of work least similar to software engineering, and when she's lobbying, Rachel is surrounded by technophobes. An internal poll found 95% of members of Congress have never used an AI tool like ChatGPT, either for work or personal use. Wow, that's pretty wild. I guess they're all boomers, eh? The vision of work I was getting from John made Rachel groan. She's never going to become an AI power user like that, and she shouldn't. It would be a total waste of her social skills, which by all indications will be the last domain in which AI can replace humans. That's the key point. As AI supercharges the computer savvy and allows them to automate the work that happens in front of a computer, the nature of advocacy organizations will change. It will distill down to the point where every organization has exactly two kinds of roles. One is hyperscaling AI orchestration, where a single power user with access to enough compute can carry out work that used to take dozens or hundreds of people. That leaves the rest of an organization's team to focus on interfacing with humans in the physical world. Social skill will become the bottleneck to scaling every animal advocacy strategy, lobbying politicians, negotiating with corporate executives, organizing volunteers to hold protests, building alliances across society, and managing human employees. We'll need an army of Rachels, and with Johns behind them, the Rachels will be able to specialize like never before. I mean it, once we get our agents together, Rachel will never even have to open a laptop again. She'll interface with her personal agents on mobile through text messages, or if she prefers, voice notes and phone calls. They'll optimize her calendar, providing her with exactly the information she needs for her next meeting based on notes they took in all her previous meetings. Liberated from touching a keyboard, she can get maximum mileage out of her legendary networking skills. Make yourself useful. I've been known to get excited about things from time to time here on Sandcastles, so let me clarify that I don't expect all computer-based work to reduce to orchestrating agents in 2026. Naturally, blogging is too hard and special to ever be done by AI. As for the rest of you, I admit there are some high-level creative tasks that LLMs don't seem close to solving. Pardon me, though, LLMs don't seem close to being solved. I think my wording was better. Strategic planning involves too much context across different domains, and too much of what AI researchers call tacit knowledge. That is, the knowledge experts pick up over a lifetime of experience without ever explicitly stating it to themselves, which therefore never gets written down and fed into LLM training data. Strategic planning, and yes, even blogging, will fall someday. But already these are the exception. The large majority of what knowledge workers do at their computers is automatable today, or is in the process of becoming automatable. I know this might sound scary for individuals employed at advocacy organizations, but it is great for animals. It means we can dramatically multiply our impact, even if the funding available for our movement stays static. I don't see any reason this should decrease the total payroll of the animal movement, but it should raise the bar. The potential impact per person has just increased sharply, and it will continue to increase. It is up to you to make sure your actual impact increases with it. I recommend choosing either the John path or the Rachel path, but I warn you, if you're going to try and worm out of the call to action in the first half of this post by claiming you're a Rachel, you better become goddamn extraordinary. I both expect and hope that the movement will hire more Johns than Rachels in 2026. If you lead an organization, I've got great news for you. There are now 2 years worth of 23-year-old computer science grads whose college career was defined by the arrival of AI and who just watched the ladder of entry-level software engineering jobs pulled away before they could grab hold. Snatch these people up and put them to work agentifying your organization. And job seekers, if you have a computer science degree, that's great, but you don't need one. I went to music school and I was looking to get a job in the movement today. This is exactly what I'd do. I'd spend 1 month holed up in my mum's basement playing with Claude Code, Codex, and OpenClaw for 10 hours a day and becoming ridiculously competent. Then I'd reach out to an organization I admire and tell them I'd like to intern for free for 2 months. By the end of 2 months, you could make yourself indispensable to any org in the space and they'll be begging you to come on full time. Yeah, this is really nice advice for people who are watching this who might be interested in working in the movement if you don't already. And this is the advice that I gave to a young aspiring animal advocate the other day on stream, or an early career animal advocate, I should say. become sick at AI. Become really, really fucking good at using Claude Cowork and all of these things. Become the person who knows all about these, and you will make yourself indispensable. Really good advice for anyone in the audience who might be looking to break into working in animal advocacy. And again, this is not something... It's not like there's a ton of people who are competent in this and you'll be competing with a million other people, right? Most of the tools he's talking about here have only existed for a month. So there are not like tons of experts that you'd be competing with if you were to try and make yourself an expert today. If you're one of the 11 people watching the live stream right now, you're at the cutting edge of knowing about this stuff. These tools have only been available for a month, and they are going to change the game in animal advocacy. So go and hole. I'm going to cancel my plans this weekend so I can go and hole up and use Claude Cowork. That's actually been on my to-do list and something that I keep putting off for a couple of weeks at this point since Richie told me about it. And as I'm hoping that this post would, it is inspiring me to go and look at it again. Or go and look at it for the first time, really. I use a lot of AI tools, but the particular new wave that they're talking about here, I have not really explored yet. You can easily make yourself a liability to an organization if you don't have domain knowledge. Yeah, that's true, AQ. Use with caution, I guess, is the is the lesson. But no, go and become an expert. You can do it. We'll have a poke around after reading this, I think. Leaders and job seekers alike, here's how I'd structure this. I'd have the AI whiz go person by person through the entire org chart, starting near the top, maybe not right at the top, because you'll learn and get better after a few rounds. I'd spend 1 week with each person, shadowing them, learning about all the repetitive pain points in their job, and building custom agent deployments for them. Once you work through the entire organization, you can start over for a second pass, then settle into a stable rhythm, continuously updating your masterpiece and building incredible new tools nobody ever dreamed of. This low-key has been kind of Richie in Prime Research. Like, he has upped our game a lot. I met him at an Effective Altruism conference about 3 years ago. And almost hired him on the spot. We had a brief interview like a week later, but you know, we were both at the right kind of point where I was looking for somebody at that point part-time to come and start work as a researcher, and he was doing a quite impressive AI coding kind of job in an unrelated field, and he was quite sort of bored with it, dissatisfied with it. But it was decently well paying, which we weren't really at that time, and so he was able to come part-time with us and to carry on doing his like more boring but well-paid job part-time, and then eventually he's come full-time with us, and he adds so much value that I can't not pay him well at this point, honestly. Like, you get, becoming sick at AI and making it, like, being very, being a champion for it, and, like, insisting on making your organization take it up and people in the organization pay attention is so valuable. So, yeah, let me, we'll have Richie come on the channel at this point, you guys, and tell him how much I was glazing, but, you know. Interesting, AQ. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that has been my experience with some AI things where, like, he mentioned the word trust a couple of times in this post, and sometimes I feel like I don't quite fully trust them. But, you know, sometimes you can't fully trust people either. So it's like, you know, like with AI drivers, we kind of understand that they don't need to be perfect. They just need to be better than the humans. So there you go. Caveats. Looks like we're coming towards the end of this post already. Caveats. For all but the most extroverted among us, 8 hours of meetings a day probably sounds exhausting. We like to tackle a meeting here and there, but focused work in front of a computer is a satisfying and productive chance to recharge our social battery. Is there room for people to split themselves 50-50 John-Rachel hybrids? Without a doubt, some extremely effective solo operatives will work this way, but there's no strict rule saying someone inside an organization couldn't do it. But it will be hard. You'll have to excel at both skill sets because the bar will be high. If this calls to you, today is the day to start honing your skills. Yeah, that sounds like me, honestly. I do like doing meetings and lobbying and emails and like kind of managing social things, but I don't like doing only that. And I do love sticking my headphones on, putting some music with no lyrics, and like getting stuck into coding or whatever it is, writing, researching kind of task, and then looking at the clock and going, but wow, that was 4 hours I've just been like plugged in. That is great feeling. So I would kind of like to keep the scope to do both. If I had to choose one, I'd probably plug in, honestly. Plug me in, and none of you will ever see me again. Finally, how long will this world last with organizations comprised of Johns and Rachels? Eventually, AI itself will overtake humans in both roles. Nobody knows how long that will take, and I don't have a very confident guess. But whether it's long or short, I'm willing to bet the farm on what comes after. The equilibrium I'm describing is the last world we'll pass through before human labor becomes obsolete. To be big or to be small, that is not the question. Things are about to get really weird. While I think it's important for animal advocacy organizations to get as much juice out of AI tools as possible, ultimately I'm more concerned with our ability to respond to dramatic changes in our strategic environment. Of course, these two things are not unrelated. Using AI tools effectively could make us more versatile. Also, seeing how organizations adapt to new tools now is a test run for how they'll react to wider disruption later on. In that light, I've been thinking a lot about the benefits of small organizations. I've spoken with a number of people who are working as consultants to help... Pardon me. Sorry, I really whacked the microphone there. That must be grim. I've spoken with a number of people who are working as consultants to help advocacy organizations implement AI tools. They all report the same thing. The agility of small orgs is shining at this moment. Some small orgs have entirely restructured themselves to make use of the new capacity freed up by AI. Meanwhile, large orgs are getting tripped up in risk aversion and bureaucracy, with outdated policies actively preventing ambitious team members from leveraging tools that are already generations out of date, to say nothing of the bleeding edge stuff. As a founder of an advocacy startup, I naturally have a soft spot for small organizations. This all fits my priors. So I was surprised to find that a few conversations this week totally shifted my perspective. While I still cherish the agility of small orgs, I've noticed a key advantage of big orgs that I'd never thought about before. At their best, big orgs are more strategically agnostic. The problem for small organizations is that their whole identity is usually bound up in a single project. You found an organization to do a specific thing. You get money by selling that idea to funders, and now you feel pressure to deliver what you promised. But most ideas just don't work out. Look at the for-profit sector. 60% of startups never turn a profit. Of the 40% that do, many of them wind up succeeding with a product completely unrelated to their original concept. The company that makes Slack was originally formed to build a video game, and when their game sucked, they decided to instead sell the internal messaging tool they'd built for themselves. That's cool, I didn't know that. I wonder if you can get the Slack video game. Oh, that's very cool. I've never heard of that before. In a for-profit startup, you can't bullshit your way to success. Eventually, you have to deliver a product people actually want. But in non-profits, this connection is severed. That's why I'm always saying. There's only a tenuous relationship between having a real-world impact and convincing people to give you money. Sometimes these are even inversely correlated, as effective altruists love to point out. Let's see. I can't resist a little look at this. Oh, well, I guess this is another huge another huge blog post. I guess I can resist. For now. This is epistemically corrosive. Naively translating from the for-profit sector, we should expect something like 60% of new advocacy ideas to fail. Nobody is better positioned to notice an idea is failing than the people working on it. Yet the incentive for these people to ignore these signals, to convince themselves it's all going to work out, because if it doesn't, they might need to shut down the org they've poured years of their lives into building. And they might worry that after this costly failure, nobody will want to trust them again. What if the same project is launched as a pilot inside of a large organization with an established identity and funding streams? Say an organization of 100 plus people sticks 2 or 3 trusted team members on the project full-time for 6 months. After 6 months, there are some promising signs, so they extend it for another 6 months. But by the end of the year, things are looking bad. The team reports back, sure, we could keep trying this and there's a small chance it would work, but that chance looks smaller than it did when we originally set out. Together, leaders decide to call the project a failure, and the team members redirect their energy towards a more promising new idea. Small orgs define themselves around the pursuit of a single strategy. Large orgs instead tend to think of themselves as building an institution. Small orgs tend to be more agile on an operational level, but larger orgs should find it easier to experiment more on the strategic level. For a real-world example, consider Anima International, a European umbrella group operating with $6 million a year and over 100 staff. I first heard of Anima as one of the main orgs responsible for corporate cage-free campaigns in Europe, so I tucked them away into the category in my head for corporate welfare campaigners. But it turns out Anima doesn't fit in this box at all. They've racked up national political victories that cover the typical abolition welfare spectrum and worked with restaurants to increase plant-based offerings. They practice a strategic agnosticism that small orgs could only dream of. Recently, Anima spotted a long-shot opportunity to promote animal welfare values among AI companies in San Francisco, 6,000 miles from their headquarters in Warsaw and even further outside their areas of expertise. That might not sound ideal, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized they're the perfect org to take this on. Since they don't need to fundraise for it specifically, they can be unflinchingly honest about whether or not it's working. This strategic agnosticism doesn't always manifest in practice. Large orgs can just as easily get complacent and stop experimenting altogether. And sometimes the fanatical determination of startups is key to unlocking real impact, spending years fighting tooth and nail where a larger org would have given up. That kind of determination was crucial in my own experience building Pro-Animal Future. We knew it was ride or die, and there was no organizational safety net to catch us and reassign us to different project if we failed. I'm glad we stuck with it, and I think the result was good for animals, even though I know I'm still biased to think that way after moving on from the org. 3.1, getting close to the final boss. In normal times, we need a mix of agility and focus. We don't always want everyone swerving all over the road chasing after the latest fad. But this balance is changing. In the next few years, the value of strategic agility is going to skyrocket because the pace of change is going to accelerate. It's like we're getting into the final levels of a game of Space Invaders. The aliens are speeding up every round. Long-term strategic planning will become less and less valuable, our impact more and more dominated by the speed of our reflexes. So who will be better able to balance focus and agility, small orgs or big orgs? 2 weeks ago, I would have confidently said small orgs. Now I think the answer is just smart orgs. Small orgs should stop thinking of themselves as pursuing a specific intervention and start focusing on building an agile organization, a vehicle that can be steered to jump on the most important opportunities as they emerge. Meanwhile, big orgs need to trim their bureaucracy. Even if leaders aren't interested in pushing AI adoption inside your org, any policies blocking your staff from experimenting are a massive own goal. It's time to cut the red tape. Organizations that get stuck in strategic tunnel vision or in outdated ways of working will fail and deserve it. You might be able to keep getting donations, but you'll let more animals die. How far would you go to achieve change for animals? Would you dedicate your life to the movement? Would you go to prison? Would you start using Claude Cowork or have Claude teach you to configure OpenClaw on a remote virtual machine? We're about to find out. Well, there you go. Hey, boss man. Hey, Miss Teaspoon. How's it going? Another great post on the Sandcastles blog. We love this blog. There's another AI post. Do we read this one? I don't think we've read that one either. Maybe we'll have to have a look at that at some point. Well, this has been pulling at my attention up in the top tab here. We got 3 LinkedIn notifications. Let's see if Paul Wood replied. Yes, he did. Biggest villain. Back for more. I think this is the biggest villain who interacts with me. Many of the big villains have maybe wisely chosen to not interact with me. Freddie Leroy and Frank Mitlona amongst the main ones. But Paul Wood still does. Your favourite strategy is to cherry pick data to make a point, then whinge when I post independent data that ruins your argument. He's crying still about the dairy thing from the other week. What do you want me to say? It can be true that sales have gone down for the last few years, but also that plant-based products are getting cheaper, while animal products are getting more expensive. Any thoughts on my work reducing the number of knives in the throats of animals, just like Tucker, while your work increases the number of knives in the throats of animals, just like Tucker? This guy really shouldn't have let me know his dog's name. Well, we're up to 46 likes, 2 reposts, and 1 villainous comment from, or 2 villainous comments, I guess, from Paul Wood. But a lot of good and supportive comments. I haven't enjoyed this Matt Acton comment. He said, show the chart comparing beef-based leaves versus plant-based leaves. The data vegans don't want you to see, I'm going to say. I was looking for the zip, I guess. Yeah, here we go. He's practically already dead, Trooper. Nearly there. I appreciate you, Miss Teaspoon. What you got as your picture? Nice little penguin baby or something, is it? Looks cute. Well, there we go, lads. Let me see if I've got anything else before I call it a day. We looked at the egg sector pushing back on the impending cage bans in the UK. We looked at based Finland setting a target to reduce meat and dairy procurement by 50% in Helsinki. We looked at the great students of the University of Southampton passing a resolution for the Students' Union catering to be default plant-based. and we looked at the plant-based news documentary on animals and AI, as well as the Sandcastles blog post on animals and AI. And we had just a little bit of fun with Paul Wood on LinkedIn. It'd be real nice if that guy comes back to have a second debate sometime. He's indicated that he won't, and I'm not that surprised because the first one didn't go too well for him. It's a baby chick? Oh, nice. Yeah, it's very small on the screen that I'm looking at. Looks cute though. Paul Wood, can't wait to put him in a shredder, I bet. Ugh, these people are beneath contempt. I'll look on Fast Action Network, see if we've got any other new things come up. We just completed it at the beginning of the stream. Yeah, nothing new on there. We check all the news outlets, I think so. We did Green Queen and Veg Economist. Anything new dropping? Other platforms you guys like to check for vegan news? Plant-based news I looked at earlier on. Yeah, nothing new there. This looks a little heavy reading for now. Alright guys, I think I'll leave it there. I've run out of excuses to not go to the gym. So I think I'll leave it there. We did a little over 3 hours today. We have a few good segments out of that. Sunday, my new video editing software credits are going to drop, and I'll be smashing those out. Or maybe I should just be making my own video editing software on Claude Code. Maybe that's what I'll be doing in a week or so time. I appreciate you guys for watching. Thank you, Miss Seaspoon, for being here. Thank you to Poe, to Bossman, AQ, Bretta, Sabi Coops. Thank you for joining me on this crazy ride. Tristan King, Hummus 420, Tufty. Don't know how many of you guys are still here, but I appreciate you. You know what I use? Normally I use Clipchamp, just like the basic, what my brother called Windows Movie Maker ass software. But I've been using something called Descript, which is, it will make the transcript of the video, and then you can edit based on the transcript and take things out of there. So yeah, it's pretty based. Pretty based. I can edit out all my ums and ahs that you guys have to endure on stream, and my long pauses. Clip chat? No, I don't know that one. Clipchamp, it's called Clipchamp. As in champion. It's like the default Windows software. Yeah. Windows Movie Maker ass. Alright guys, I appreciate you a lot. Yeah, Descript, that one's called. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, everyone, and I will see you next stream. Cheers.